Chapter 89. P.S. The name of the previous chapter was wrong, it was Out of Body Realm. Recently I was perfecting the outline and subconsciously made a mistake. Thank you to those who love to read books and immortal books. High up in the mountains, a small tomb sat on a pile of rock. It was roughly 20 feet wide, pieced together with stones and reinforced with spells. Although the tomb was small, it still took Zhong Shou a night of effort. In this wilderness deep in the mountains, there were many corpse-eating beasts. Even if it was buried deep underground, it could be dug out. Zhong Shou decided to use stone as a coffin and stone as a cave to build this tomb. Within the desolate mountains, there was nowhere to shop. Things like paper money and incense couldn't be bought. He also didn't bring anything that he could use. Zhong Shou could only burn 2 sticks of sandalwood and use materials to make a soul-summoning banner. He used water to replace wine and poured it in front of the stone stele. Gong Shinran, although we have spent less than a day together, I like your kindness and sincerity. Unfortunately, life is unpredictable and after this meeting, we will never meet again. Although this mountain is lonely, the scenery is great, the spiritual veins are thick, and the yin energy is abundant. It is a top-quality tomb. As he said that, Zhong Shou suddenly felt that something wasn't right. Before this, he felt that this place was great. Not only was it far from Blood Valley, but it was also the only suitable burial place within hundreds of miles. However, thinking about it now, the spiritual veins were thick and the yin energy was abundant. Wasn't it the best place to nourish vengeful spirits and corpses? With the state that Gong Shinran was in before she died, he still had ways to defend against vengeful spirit. However, he had to burn Gong Shinran's corpse for this vengeful corpse. Oh right, he remembered that the spiritual veins below seemed to have 2 yin veins? No, was it 4 or 5? He didn't have a compass on him so he couldn't measure it. All of a sudden, Zhong Shou's head was covered in cold sweat as he shook his head, thinking that since this woman said that her wishes were fulfilled, she probably wouldn't come back to life. To change a burial place was indeed problematic, and he didn't have the time. However, his tone changed as he coughed. Senior Sister Shinran, you don't have to worry down there. I will definitely give that book of martial secrets to your younger brother. In the future, your family will come and take you away. Zhong Shou will not go back on his word. The primordial ancient Buddha, benevolent Taoist Lord, and boundless ink, please protect my senior apprentice Sister Shinran. It's a pity that you don't remember the Requiem mantra of Buddhism and Taoism. He bowed, which was considered to be the end of the ceremony. Zhong Shou smiled bitterly. He was really useless. He couldn't even protect that guy's beloved woman. If he had known earlier, he would have followed them up the mountain. Even if he couldn't defeat Gao Yi, as long as he could avoid that Xiantian, he should be able to protect Gong Shinran and escape with his life. With a sigh, Zhong Shou looked at the thick golden book in his hand. After killing Gao Yi and that unknown martial master, other than obtaining the medicine bottle, there were also many elixirs for martial cultivation. Naturally, this book of martial secrets was also snatched back. However, at this moment, Zhong Shou was filled with questions. The martial secrets were said to have been personally written by the 3 strongest martial saints during the Cloud Desolate era. It recorded a total of 140 martial path secret techniques as well as the basic martial path insights that the 3 saints comprehended. It was seen as a martial path classic by all martial cultivators. It was said that the reason the 3rd saint wrote this scripture was to spread the martial arts in the cloud world so that all commoners could learn high-level martial arts. Today there were less than 200 of them, and they were controlled by those big families, which was totally different from the original intentions of the 3 saints. However, in the future, apart from a portion of the book being kept a secret, the rest of the book was spread out. Most of it had already been spread out. That Gao Yi spent 2 years just for a copy of the essentials of the martial scripture? Could it be that there is some other mystery in this book? Zhong Shou was slightly confused. However, thinking about it carefully, it made sense. Even if it was a copy, to a newly risen aristocratic family, it could be considered a Marshall Path treasure book that could be passed down. He had already read this book in his last life. Within Gantian Mountain, there was also a more complete book of martial secret. Zhong Shou wasn't willing to look into the secrets within, directly keeping it in his waist bag. He felt that the burden on his body had increased by a little. Without the void ring of the future, how troublesome, thinking about it, he felt that it wasn't appropriate. Zhong Shou picked up a sword and started to draw a talisman formation around the stone tomb. They were all talismans that could cleanse evil spirit. Zhong Shou learned very little in his last life. He learned talismans just to look into the heaven and earth path and spiritual energy laws recorded in these words. It was extremely beneficial to his martial path and sword technique. He even created a sword technique specifically for this. However, he didn't come into contact with talismans that could suppress vengeful spirits and cleanse evil energy. After barely completing the talisman formation, Zhong Shou's brows were still tightly furrowed. He had seen this talisman formation in his last life. It was said that it was extremely effective in suppressing vengeful corpses. At this moment, he was just following the rough memories he had. There seems to be something wrong. However, this Yin energy has already sunk. It shouldn't have become a Yin energy land? Rubbing his chin, he sighed uncertainly. Zhong Shou shook his head irresponsibly, not bothering about it anymore. Anyways, to form a vengeful corpse, it would take at least 99 years. At most, in 2 years, he would let the Gong family people move her away. In just a short moment, a thin and graceful figure could be seen in the distance. She was standing on the head of a giant lion and was rushing over at high speed. 200 feet away, he jumped up into the air and landed beside Zhong Shou. Young master, I have followed your instructions and burned those corpses into ashes and threw them into Demon Corpse Mountain. As for that Gao Yi, he has most likely fallen into the stomachs of those beasts. As she said that, Chu Shui looked at the tombstone, her eyes dimming. This Sister Shinran is really pitiful. She will most probably regret meeting this beast in the underworld. Zhong Shou didn't agree. As they say, treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. As long as she had this book of martial secrets, even without Gao Yi, this Gong Shinran would most probably lose her life. Shaking his head slightly, Zhong Shou looked at the rising moon lion, only to see that the giant lion's eyes were filled with a begging expression. He couldn't help but frown. Why did you bring it here again? When Chu Shui heard that, her face was filled with dejection. This lion wants to follow me. Shui can't get rid of it. Why don't you chase it back? Zhong Shou thought back to the situation where Chu Shui rode on this lion and couldn't help but feel annoyed. Although this rising moon lion wasn't the best choice for protector beast, having another Xiantian beast would be of some help. Forget it. Since those corpses have been dealt with, then we can go back. Oh right, open your mouth. Chu Shui didn't understand and also let out an. Then, she only felt a small red pill being thrown into her mouth. Young master. Chu Shui wanted to grumble and spit out the thing in her mouth. However, she felt a sweet taste at the tip of her tongue. She tried to chew and only felt that it was fragrant and sweet, unknowingly swallowing it. How sweet! Young master, what is this thing? It smells so good. Zhong Shou smiled and jumped onto the lion's back. What else can it be? Naturally, it is the human pinnacle pill. Chu Shui's body froze, and she stood rooted to the spot. After a long while, Zhong Shou and the hook-tail lion had walked further and further away before she hurriedly chased after them. Not long after the two of them left, in the sky above the stone tomb, a huge bolt of lightning struck down and numerous dark clouds gathered. 9 fissures, each about 10 feet wide, suddenly appeared on the ground. The fissures spread all the way to the grave. On the stone stele, the 3 words Gong Shinran actually had threads of blood dripping down. Chapter 90. At night, on the path of the wilderness, one could see an illusionary yet not illusionary mist galloping. Along with the surrounding environment changing, its color was also changing. Sometimes it was green, sometimes it was gray and yellow. If one was far away, one wouldn't be able to notice its presence. If one got close, one could see a 20-foot tall male lion galloping swiftly. Not only was there a mist wrapping around its body, but its body was also partially visible under the setting sun. Zhong Shou sat on the wide back of the lion, his eyes seemingly closed as he laid there comfortably, bathing in the last bit of sunlight. Apart from that, there were 2 ropes behind the giant lion. At the end of the ropes was Chu Shui, her face flushed red as she was chained to the back. The other was Little Gold, who was jumping around. However, most of the time it was being dragged into the air. Although his body was round, at this moment, he was making a very pitiful and uncomfortable expression. Chu Shui's eyes shone brightly as she looked pitifully at Zhong Shou, nearly opening her mouth to beg. Seeing that the teen lying on the lion's back seemed to have fallen asleep, her eyes rolled as she jumped up and stepped on the tail of the rising moon lion. However, before she was able to stabilize herself, she was struck by a white light. It was a stone that struck the back of Chu Shui's leg. Her body instantly felt numb as she fell off the lion's back once more. She almost fell, and she ran a few steps unsteadily before she stabilized herself. With a sad face, she said, "Young master, Shui has already run for half a day. 300 miles, she didn't stop for even a moment. Yesterday, she didn't rest at all." Zhong Shou sighed slightly, as if he had just woken up from a dream and stretched his back. The tiredness from the previous night had dissipated by quite a bit. Before this, he felt that this lion wasn't suitable to be his protector beast. However, at this moment, he felt that it wasn't bad to have such a beast as a steed. According to what he knew, spirit masters mostly chose spirit beast spirits as their protector beasts. Firstly, they were easy to control, and secondly, they were easy to nurture. As long as they had enough yin energy, spirit stones, and materials, they could quickly increase their rank. As for living beast-type protector beasts, they were really rare. Elite beasts had flesh and blood bodies, and were often inconvenient to carry around. Their chi and blood were strong, and they were resistant to the soul-controlling formation, which made it easy for them to suffer a backlash. The soul power consumed by a spirit master was several times that of a spirit beast, so it couldn't be sealed. Raising one's combat strength was also the most difficult. Even if spirit masters occasionally chose living elite beasts as their protector spirit beasts, they would choose those with low spiritual intelligence or young beasts to nurture. Xiao Jin belonged to the former category. In fact, this little guy's intelligence was not weak, but in the eyes of the world, octopuses were born with low intelligence. If it was a cub, unless it was a high-grade elite beast when it was born. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been a good choice. From the 1st level to the 9th level, without thousands of years and countless spiritual herbs, it was impossible to achieve. Like the black flood dragon that Lingyun Long rode that day was an anomaly. It was said that from the initial black python to now close to transforming into a dragon, it only took 20 years. At this moment, although the rising moon lion under him wasn't much, its comprehension was really good. That day, he used his soul to drive the sword and only used the rising moon sword intent once. This lion had comprehended something, causing its bloodline to mutate and enter grade 4. Not only was the rising moon lion quick, but it was also good at stealth. Its combat strength during the day was enough to go up against same grade peak monster beasts. If it was at night, it would be the king of beasts. Only such a beast was good at hiding, moving swiftly and killing in one strike. It was an assassin in the night, but it wasn't as good as the current Xiao Jin. However, it was barely suitable to be used as a mount. Although it couldn't fly, sleeping on its back was much more comfortable than a carriage. Seeming to sense Zhong Shou's thoughts, the rising moon lion couldn't help but give out a sad cry, like it was mourning its fate of becoming a mount. Zhong Shou didn't care at all. Just as he was about to enter meditation, he couldn't stand the gaze behind him that could pierce through him. He said helplessly, "Stop staring, I am doing this for your own good. That human pinnacle pill is really effective. It is the top foundation-building spiritual pill for the bodily chakra level. Shui, you are also lucky, with the help of this pill and with me personally teaching you. Within 3 months you can enter the Xiantian realm. However, the effects of this pill are the hardest to digest. The longer you run, the better it is for you. Xiao Jin's situation is similar to yours. There is a good saying, a treasure sword is sharpened from grinding, the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold. Without going through wind and rain, how can one see the rainbow?" Chu Shui's expression was filled with rage, still unwilling to accept it. No matter how strong the human pinnacle pill was, could it be stronger than the essence of the lightning phoenix egg? Following which Zhong Shou turned his head and looked back with a smile that wasn't a smile. "Of course, if Shui is willing to learn 3 sets of energy leading techniques from me, you can memorize them all. You won't have to run so hard." Chu Shui's face instantly scrunched up, similar to a bitter gourd. Compared to the energy-leading technique that made one sleepy and soft, she would rather walk. Zhong Shou smiled, sending his spiritual sense into his soul ocean. Since that day when he swallowed the essence energy of the lightning phoenix, this was the first time he started to carefully inspect his soul. As expected, it is because of the mental source of the lightning phoenix. Only to see that the thunderbolt talisman was already hanging in the center of the whirlpool. It had turned into a Luan bird that was spreading its wings and about to fly. What was more shocking was that below the Luan bird was a 7-tailed spiritual fox. Between the two of them, there were signs of merging. He didn't dare to use his spiritual sense to get close, but as long as he wanted to gather the surrounding lightning, the Luan bird would give off a light. 7-tailed spiritual fox and lightning phoenix, illusion and lightning merging into one? Zhong Shou smiled bitterly. These 2 types of powers didn't have any connection or merging. He observed his entire soul ocean. At this moment it was tens of times stronger than a few days ago, starting to show its scale. That whirlpool was also much bigger. The problems that hadn't appeared before finally showed signs. Only to see that for some reason, his soul was riddled with holes. There was only a layer protecting it outside. His current situation was like a balloon that was sewn. His soul power could swell up, but once it reached a certain level, it would leak. Apart from that, there was also his bloodline. At the core of his soul ocean, apart from the 7-tailed sky fox, there was also a certain bloodline mark. At this moment, even if the former had signs of merging with the lightning phoenix mark, he still wouldn't be at a disadvantage. So the human race bloodline has a difference between the outside and the inside. Zhong Shou had some comprehension. This was probably one of the reasons why Lingyun Long Rua gave up on him. His soul was actually born with the problem of collapsing. With his situation, if he didn't cultivate soul power, it would be okay. The moment he did, even if his soul power cultivation stopped improving, in just a few days he would die. However, coincidentally, a heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique and a lightning phoenix egg actually solved this problem of mine. Should I say that this is luck, or does the heavens want me to walk the path of a spirit master? Chapter 91. Zhong Shou's soul was indeed riddled with holes. However, the nature of the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique caused a whirlpool to form in his soul ocean. Not only did it absorb the spiritual energy around his body, but it also caused all his soul power to condense and compress naturally such that it couldn't spread out. Naturally, it couldn't be said to be expanding or leaking. Although those cracks were there, they didn't affect him at all. As for the dual meridians in his body, originally if the human race bloodline was activated, going from dark to light, it could totally remove his sky fox blood. However, due to the hidden holes in his soul, this process became really dangerous. Now that he merged with the soul mark of the lightning phoenix and merged with the sky fox blood, he could barely go up against it. Thinking about that, Zhong Shou's face was filled with helplessness. Although it could be said to have been solved, the spiritual cultivation he cultivated was still 10 to 100 times more dangerous than others. It's really a freak combination of factors. I, Tanqiu, prided myself on being smart, but who knew that I would make such a mistake? If he didn't think that he was smart and cultivated soul power to suppress the energy conflicts in his body, he would have been able to control his bloodline. His dual meridian body originally had hopes of changing to a single meridian. Now, he had to go all out to maintain the balance of the two bloodlines in his body. He had really moved a rock, and in the end, he had smashed his own foot. The Lu family that ruled the 800 worlds? Where did this family come from? What kind of bloodline do they have? How terrifying! Deep in thought, he looked at the two god-beast marks in his soul ocean. Zhong Shoxin's body was filled with raging waves. The ancient lightning phoenix could be ranked in the top 100 of god-beasts. The seven-tailed sky fox was also a descendant of god-beasts. Moreover, this branch of his should be able to evolve. The blood of the two god-beasts merged into one, and he could only go up against it. One could imagine just how terrifying it was. If he guessed correctly, the reason why his body had so many flaws was mostly because of it. She recalled the memories of Zhong Shou's childhood when she was mesmerized by Zhao Yanran's Netherworld song of the Netherworld a few months ago. The legendary Lu family had disappeared 10,000 years later. No one knew where they went. It was rumored that they had opened up a new great thousand world. Later generations could only experience the might of this tyrannical family in the God Emperor game. However, even in the virtual world, it was still difficult to know the truth about this family. The data set in the game was also wrong. After all, the designer of God Emperor had never truly experienced this era. He could only obtain bits and pieces of the experiences of the people of the Divine Emperor era from the historical records and the records of the various sects, and then use his brain to calculate. Moreover, when he got the Book of Ian, there were still no players who came into direct contact with the Lu family. Zhong Shou secretly frowned and withdrew his consciousness from his source soul. Then, he sat on the lion's back in a daze and fell into deep thought. The matter of the Lu clan should have nothing to do with him. Since he hadn't come looking for trouble with him in the past 13 years, then he should have known better. They probably wouldn't bother about him in the future. On the other hand, his future path had to be really careful. The problems in my soul are these hidden cracks. In the future, I can think of ways to make up for them. Be it cultivation methods or pills. He remembered a few of them. However, what flaws do I have in my bodily chakra for Long Ra to say that I won't be able to break through to Xiantian? Zhong Shou tried to activate the third set of internal breathing leading techniques, but he only felt that all the 9 meridians of the bodily chakra were unobstructed, and there was nothing worth paying attention to. However, his heart felt even more dark and gloomy. Even if it wasn't these 9 meridians, then the only possibility was that place. As expected, it was the most problematic problem. No wonder Ling Yun and Long Ra didn't even think about it that day and immediately gave up on him. Sighing, Zhong Shou temporarily suppressed all these annoying matters. He started to purely enjoy the joy of his soul entering the out-of-body realm. He only felt that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was like an ocean wrapping around him. There was no longer that barrier from before. Normal spirit masters who just entered this realm would usually feel a suffocating feeling in front of this vast spiritual ocean. They would often need to spend several months before they could get used to it. Zhong Shou didn't feel anything at all like a fish in the water. His mind was free to roam about in this ocean. All the spiritual energy around was like water, and he could use it as he wished. Especially the lightning element's spiritual energy in heaven and earth. With just a thought, he could use it. Zhong Shou suddenly had an idea, and a thought started to gather in his palm. Following which, threads of purple lightning formed and swelled into the size of a fist, giving out a dim purple light. Who knows how this lightning power is in the power of power? Legend has it that the pinnacle of lightning techniques in the cloud world is the mysterious cloud spirit sect which occupies the third spiritual house. Legend has it that when the mysterious cloud purple extreme lightning technique is cultivated to the extreme, it can destroy the cloud continent in one strike. Unfortunately, I don't know how to cultivate it. Speaking of which, since my soul can already go out of body, I should choose some techniques to learn. Oh right, I also need a spiritual artifact flying sword. This matter is really problematic. In this world, be it martial masters or spirit masters, the items they used to aid in battle were split into talisman weapons, spiritual artifacts, and magical treasures. All talisman weapons could be crafted by spirit blacksmith. However, at the spiritual artifact level, one needed a spirit blacksmith to craft it. There were spirit blacksmiths everywhere, but most of them were recruited by sects and aristocratic families. As for the remaining factionless cultivators, their artifact crafting standards weren't satisfactory. In the Donglin cloud world, there were also some large cities where one could buy them. However, whether or not it was a suitable item, whether or not it was easy to use, whether or not it was compatible with his mind, it all depended on his luck. Suddenly feeling something, Zhong Shou came back to his senses and looked behind him. He only felt that Chu Shui's aura had finally returned to normal. He laughed lightly and kept Little Gold, who was already tired from jumping around. Just as Chu Shui's eyes lit up and was about to jump onto the lion's back, she suddenly thought about something and smiled. Oh right. Shui, I remember what you said before. You need to train your bodily chakra and break the Enlock before you can do it with me. Now that you have consumed this human pinnacle pill, it should be about 3 months, right? The meridians in Chushue's body stopped, and she fell from the sky. Luckily, her steps were nimble and she didn't fall. A moment later, she jumped onto the lion's back. However, she lowered her head and didn't even dare to look at Zhong Shou, stuttering, "No. At the start, the ruler said that I could only break the bodily chakra when I was 18. Now, it has been a long time. If you want to do it with me, wait until Shui is 18. The Spirit Emperor's internal scripture says that if you do it too early, your essence won't be strong and your vital energy will be lacking. Anyways, you can't do it." Zhong Shou burst out laughing. Lacking vital energy, lacking vital energy? What kind of nonsense was this? Why didn't he remember the Spirit Emperor's internal scripture mentioning it? Following which, he saw Chu Shui's eyes turn and she asked curiously, "Young master, you really don't want that 7-spirit ring? Leaving it in the Blood Valley isn't good. Although it's from the demon path, I heard that if it's used for good, if it's used for evil, then it's evil." Zhong Shou was startled, thinking that this brat was smart and knew how to change the topic. However, he shook his head seriously. "This item is too cruel and I can't bear to use it. I'm also not willing to let Gao Yi off, so I might as well give it to someone else." "What you said makes sense. However, the reason why the demon path is called the demon path has its reasons and isn't so simple." Following which, he didn't explain, only guessing the background of that Xiantian master. Since he didn't know his background, he could only destroy the corpse. Although he was arrogant, he wasn't so arrogant that he had to make such a strong enemy. Chapter 93. Similarly, in the evening, within Blood Valley, a wobbly figure was rushing towards the demon corpse mountain in this valley wasteland. His body was covered in a black silk shirt, covered in blood marks. His face was hidden in a black mist such that one couldn't see his face clearly. When he sprinted, he was really fleeting. Suddenly, the black-robed man stopped and looked into the distance. About 1,000 feet away, a bracelet was lying quietly in the grass. Vaguely, one could hear the sound of crying coming from within the bracelet. The gaze in the black mist was instantly filled with shock. Hesitating for a moment, he charged over and took the bracelet in his hand. This item instantly started to shake and struggle like it wanted to break out of his control. The black shirt man laughed coldly, a drop of blood dripping onto the bracelet. Then, he dashed once more, his body swiftly disappearing into the giant mountain in the distance. Moments after this person left, a voice rang out. A golden light suddenly sped over from the distance. It stopped in the air above this place. It was a dazzling golden flying sword that was extraordinarily gorgeous. It was made of gold and was inlaid with numerous gems, extremely eye-catching. As for the figure on the sword, it was slightly plump. His body was covered in a golden robe that was made from threads of golden silk. His 2 fat ears had a total of 6 earrings that hung brightly and were also inlaid with gems. Around his waist was a pure white jade belt, and on his fingers were 10 gem rings. Similar to the sword below, it shone with a golden light, giving off a rich aura. Looking in the direction of Demon Corpse Mountain, the golden shirt fat man's face was filled with hesitation and unwillingness. In the end, he laughed coldly. You are lucky to actually escape into Demon Corpse Mountain. To be able to escape from my hands, you do have some skill. I only hope that in the future, I won't bump into you. Scoffing majestically, Jean Buhue was about to leave on his sword. Suddenly, his heart moved as he looked hundreds of miles away. What a thick energy there! The mist gathered and didn't dissipate, like there is a thing there. Weird, the thing in Demon Corpse Mountain shouldn't be born yet. Without hesitation, he turned into a golden light and headed towards where the black mist was surging. In an instant, he traveled 10 miles. In less than a quarter of an hour, he had already arrived at the top of a mountain. Jean Buhue, who was stepping on the golden sword, instantly sucked in a cold breath. 9 absolute meridians? How is that possible? There were actually 9 veins gathered near the Devil Corpse Mountain? No wonder the energy here was so strong. Resentment is rising. Could there be a resentful soul fiend corpse here? Why is the situation so strange? He looked around and in just a short moment, he found the source of the phenomenon. Senior apprentice Sister Gong Shinran's tomb has blood runes on the tombstone. What a heavy aura of resentment. She must have experienced something extremely tragic before she died. But something seemed wrong, and the talisman formation outside is also very strange. After looking carefully for a moment, the corner of Jean Buhue's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but curse. Which bastard is this? His resentment had clearly dissipated, yet he insisted on being buried in the 9 extremis. Thus, this woman's resentment seemed to exist yet not exist. Also, which spirit master's inheritance did this glyph array come from? Such a good bright light evil expelling formation was actually drawn in such a manner. Expelling evil turned into gathering evil, the bright light changed into the nether moon. Do you want to expel evil or refine 9 spiritual corpses? How did your master teach you? You're such a freaking weirdo. Oh, you can actually see that there are several veins below. But if you didn't draw this formation, wouldn't nothing happen? No. Nether moon gathering evil along with the 9 absolute meridians. Also, the corpse wishes have been fulfilled and the body still has resentment. It is obviously a heaven corpse formation and the reincarnation of a 9 witch. Bastard, I have never heard of it! Muttering softly in his mouth, Jean Buhue's face was covered in cold sweat and his face turned ashen white. He raised the golden sword in his hand, only to see numerous lightning bolts exploding and flashing in the sky. The black fog gradually condensed into the shape of a human figure. Jean Buhue's sweat was like a waterfall, flowing endlessly. That golden sword didn't dare to fly forward an inch. This formation, this tomb, and also this 9 gathering formation. He couldn't break it and didn't dare to break it. Hesitating for a moment, the golden shirt fat man decisively kept his sword. He laughed and waved his sleeves, turning around and leaving without bringing away a single cloud. Forget it. Anyways, this 9 witch needs 9 more years to reincarnate. I am not good at expelling evil, so why do I have to risk my life for it? Let's wait for the future to invite those bald donkeys and cow noses over. However, if I have a chance in the future, I really want to meet the person who set this up. Green veins popped out on his hands, the veins on his neck swelled up by several times. I really want to kill him now. At the entrance of Cloud Saint City, Zhong Shou suddenly felt a chill down his spine. It was as if a strong murderous aura suddenly pierced through the air. His brows rose up weirdly as he looked around. Zhong Shou didn't care at all. As they say, when you have too many lice, you won't feel itchy. There were simply too many people who wanted to kill him, so he was too lazy to bother about them. When he and Chu Shui left the city, they changed their appearances. When they entered the city, they did the same. However, they couldn't bring the rising moon lion into the city. Luckily, this beast was best at hiding its track. If it was further away from the city, it wouldn't be noticed. With its grade 4 strength, unless one was a Xiantian master, one wouldn't be able to do anything. Using the night sky, they returned to the place the Cloud Saint City Lord arranged for them to stay. Just as Zhong Shou entered from the back door, he saw Yin Yang doing the horse-riding stance in the courtyard. His body was twisting rhythmically from top to bottom, and the bones all over his body were letting out crisp sounds, as if soybeans were being fried. However, his face was filled with worry and helplessness. Zhong Shou's eyes lit up, filled with praise. Not bad. Even if you reach Xiantian, you didn't forget about your foundations. With Uncle Yin's hard work, you will definitely reach the Ascended Realm in the future. Yin Yang was slightly shocked, following which his eyes were filled with joy as he walked over. After bowing, he looked closely at Zhong Shou. However, Zhong Shou's aura was more and more restrained, no different from a normal person. He was unable to see through his true strength. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Prince, has the Blood Valley matter been completed? Is the Lightning Phoenix egg really on Demon Corpse Mountain? I shouldn't have agreed with you. Yin Yang should have followed you. I have researched this matter for so long, how could I be wrong? Furthermore, if you leave, those people will guess that I am not here." Zhong Shou didn't want to keep him in suspense. Seeing Yin Yang's face filled with surprise and disbelief, he couldn't help but laugh. Just as he was about to talk about his cultivation progress, his brows furrowed as he looked forward. "Uncle Yin, there seems to be someone in the hall?" Yin Yang was pumped up. To be able to sense the situation in the hall, one had to be at least at the Mythic Master realm. A moment later, his face was filled with a troubled expression. "Miss Erin has come here to find the prince 3 times in these 2 days. Before this, I tried my best to reject her, saying that the young master was in the city lord's manor. However, this time she isn't willing to leave, like she wants to see the prince." Zhong Shou was enlightened. So it was his fiancée who was in the hall. P.S. Many people are asking Gong Shinran. I will explain here that no matter if she is alive or not, to the main character, this part of the story has already ended and won't be the same situation as the first book. I will post the contents of the first chapter and also thank the readers for their support. Anyone who has seen the Forceful Push rankings should know that next month there will be many gods. The results of the first Wasteland can be said to be really bad. Out of the books that were forcefully pushed, this Shen Huang should have the worst results. Although many people collected it, they didn't read it. First Wasteland had totally given up on the monthly book rankings and only hoped that the subscriptions would be better. This is the first chapter of the book. First Wasteland begs for everyone to help First Wasteland order it. Even if they raised it, it was okay. First Wasteland was confident that he could make the book more and more exciting. The plot of this book was far from being fully developed. However, The first order was really important and concerned the life and death of the book. Of course, if there were more subscriptions, First Wasteland would be more confident in continuing. He bowed once more, solemnly asking for everyone's support. First Wasteland was really grateful. Chapter 94. Fiancé. Zhong Shou was also a little helpless. A few days ago when he left the city, he had expected such a scene. Most likely, she had come all the way here to look for him. After accepting the 13 years of memories of the previous Zhong Shou, he felt a little uncomfortable. His heart was more or less uncomfortable, and there was also some anger in his chest. However, this matter had to be dealt with, and he wasn't willing to be tangled up in it. Is she here to break off the engagement? Seeing that Yin Yang's expression was a little weird, Zhong Shou didn't take it to heart. Thinking that it was good to meet her now, he walked towards the living room in the front courtyard. The living quarters that Cloud Saint City had arranged for them were huge, a small courtyard with 4 entrances. When Zhong Shou walked into the living room, he saw 2 girls sitting in the hall. One looked around 16, with red lips and white teeth, an almond-shaped face and rosy cheek. He was wearing a red tight-fitting shirt with arrow sleeves that was tailored to fit him. Although her growth wasn't as bad as Chu Shui's, under the contrast of the shirt, she was still really attractive. The other girl was dressed like a servant. Around 20, she looked pretty and dignified. However, her face was dark and sunken like she was really unhappy. At the city gate, he had seen the 2 of them from afar. However, seeing them now, the feeling was a little different. Looking at Zhong Shou and the others walk in, the girl's brows furrowed as she looked carefully at Zhong Shou. In just a moment, her eyes were filled with disappointment. The latter scoffed coldly, "You are finally willing to show your face? Our miss has come here 3 times, and each time, she has waited for several hours. Prince Zhong Shou, you are really arrogant." Zhong Shou broke out into a laugh, too lazy to bother about this girl's rude words. Since they were already going to fall out with each other, there was no need for him to be polite. He didn't care about etiquette, directly sitting down in the hall, expressionlessly saying, "Is little Miss Erin here to break off the engagement? This matter is okay. Zhong Shou knows about your difficulties and doesn't dare to force it. Uncle Yin, bring me a brush and ink. I'll write an insulated book." Yin Yang's expression was awkward and he didn't move. The girl in red also looked at Zhong Shou and Yin Yang in surprise. Finally, she frowned and said, "Who said I want to break off the engagement? The marriage between you and me was arranged by our parent. We have already changed the date of the marriage. Natsai, Wenming, Nasi, Naching, everything is ready. They were just short of the wedding date. How could he be crippled so easily? If you want to break off the engagement, what will you do to me, Xianyuan Erin?" Zhong Shou could hardly close his mouth. His face was full of astonishment. What was going on? This Xianyuan Erin running over to find him, if it wasn't for him to break off the engagement, then what was it for? Could it be that he was worried about something? Was there something else he was particular about? He remembered that in ancient times, although women's loyalty was highly valued, the culture was also extremely open. With the status of Xianyuan Erin's parents, they shouldn't be affected. It was just that their reputation was slightly bad. Xianyuan Erin didn't give up, furiously staring at Zhong Shou. "Do you think that I, Xianyuan Erin, am such a treacherous person?" Zhong Shou was more and more speechless. For some reason, he only felt that this girl had an extremely strong aura. Especially at this moment, she actually suppressed him such that he had no way to fight back. His brows furrowing, Zhong Shou forcefully coughed, "Of course not. However, I heard that Miss Erin was extremely against this marriage in the past. Uncle and Auntie didn't ask about Zhong Shou these few years, and their attitude is obvious. I, Zhong Shou, know that I am in a precarious situation and don't dare to drag you down. Actually, Miss Erin doesn't need to mind. It is normal for humans to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. This concerns your life, so you should be really careful. Moreover, this matchmaking didn't even ask for our opinions. Zhong Shou also feels disgusted. Shut up. Before his words landed, he heard Xianyuan Iren shout out coldly. Then, with a clang, a bright sword was suddenly pointed at Zhong Shou's nose. It was cold and cold, giving off a solemn killing intent. The eyes of the red-shirt teen seemed to be spitting out flames, extremely stubborn. Although my name is Iren, if you read it backwards, it is benevolent and righteous. The surname Xianyuan was passed down by the ancient saint. It is a noble surname and can't be tainted. When Uncle Weiran was still around, it was fine if this marriage was cancelled. I don't like you, Zhong Shou, so naturally I can say what I want. However, now that Uncle isn't here, if Xianyuan Iren wants to cancel the marriage, that would be hitting a person who is down, ungrateful. The corner of Zhong Shou's eyes twisted once more as he stared furiously at Yin Yang beside him. He scolded out in his heart, thinking to himself that this was the fiancée that he said wanted to cancel the marriage? He only saw that Yin Yang's face was filled with joy and admiration. Sighing slightly, Zhong Shou only felt that his body had no strength, his brows tightly furrowed. Then when Miss Iren came here, did you ask Uncle and Auntie for their opinions? How about this? I, Zhong Shou, will write out this book and let you bring it back for your parents to decide. I don't blame your Xian Mountain City Xianyuan family for canceling the marriage. It is because I, Zhong Shou, have someone I like, so I took the initiative to cancel the marriage. The face of the girl dressed as a servant instantly changed, a look of joy flashing across her face. Xianyuan Iren was also slightly shocked. Sizing up Zhong Shou, she laughed coldly. I don't like your personality. Taking the initiative to cancel the marriage, do you really not want to drag me down? Or do you want to puff yourself up at your own cost and act like a good person? Or do you know that you are definitely going to die? Although you're useless, you'll be my future husband. Don't say such words in front of me in the future. If you have someone you like, then just marry her in the future. My father has a bunch of wives and concubines, and my mother didn't say anything. What does this have to do with canceling the marriage? Zhong Shou was speechless, not knowing what to say next. Xianyuan Iren had already kept her sword, looking valiant and valiant. No matter what my parents think, I won't do such an untrustworthy thing. Don't worry, you are my fiancé. From today on, I will follow by your side. With me here, I won't let you die in the hands of others. Even if you, Zhong Shou, are trash, no one will dare to offend you in the future. Before her words landed, she didn't care whether Zhong Shou agreed or not. She had already walked towards the inner courtyard, leaving Zhong Shou stunned in the hall. After being stunned for a moment, that young woman stood in front of Zhong Shou with an ugly expression and bowed respectfully. Xian Saint City's Li Yunyang greets the prince. Zhong Shou's eyes instantly froze. Not only because of this woman, but her aura was several times stronger than Yin Yang's. Even the current him couldn't see how deep she was. It was also because of the killing intent that she didn't bother to hide. At this moment, she looked over coldly like two ice blades, causing his face to hurt. Little Miss has always been a lone wolf. Her personality is a little weird and a little naive. Please forgive me, Your Highness. However, if I am the prince, it is best to cancel this marriage. Did you know that not long ago, the seventh direct disciple of the mysterious Cloud Spirit sect proposed to Xian Mountain City? Not only did the wife of the city lord agree, but even the city lord agreed. Laughing coldly, Li Yunyang's expression turned deep. Prince, it is best if you don't have any wishful thinking. The longer this matter drags on, the worse it will be for you. You are a piece of trash who can't cultivate. How can you be worthy of my little miss? That is all I have to say, please think about it. Chapter 95. When Li Yunyang's graceful figure followed Xianyuan Iren and left, Zhong Shou felt his head swell up and his head hurt. He didn't care much about Li Yunyang's words. What he was worried about was this marriage. It seemed like even if he took the initiative to break it, he might not be able to. What kind of name was benevolence and righteousness? This Xianyuan Iran's personality was a little weird. When his father was here, she didn't give up and wanted to break the marriage. Now that her future was dark and she was in danger, she came over. Looking at the situation, she was set on following him. Was there something wrong with this girl's head? However, a direct disciple of mysterious cloud spirit sect? Why did it sound so annoying in his ears? Coincidentally, he remembered that not long ago, he had thought about this sect because of the lightning technique. Today, he had just returned to the city, and he had already gotten involved with this great sect that was famous for its lightning art. Coming back to his senses, Chu Shui was so furious that her body was trembling. She gritted her teeth, her face tensed up, and she didn't make a sound. Yin Yang's eyes were shining. After a long while, he scoffed in disdain. I heard that Xian Mountain City Lord Xianyuan Tong is righteous and true to his words. Today it seems like he is also a person who goes against his word. When he said those words, Yin Yang didn't avoid it and didn't stop. In the back courtyard, Li Yunyang, who hadn't left far away, instantly gave off an aura. A moment later, he stopped making any noise. Only a cold scoff spread out, useless words. If you want to die, that's up to you. If there are any unexpected things in the future, don't blame me for not warning you. Zhong Shou was originally laughing, but when he heard the last sentence, his face sunk and turned cold. He didn't care about this marriage agreement. However, what he was most annoyed about in his life was being threatened. Mysterious cloud spirit sect? Zhong Shou laughed coldly and shook his head in disdain. Seeing that Yin Yang was unable to restrain his anger, he directly asked, Uncle Yin, have you bought the things I asked you to prepare? As expected, Yin Yang's attention was diverted. After being startled for a moment, he respectfully replied, The medicinal cauldron that the heir ordered was easy to find. I had already bought it a few days ago. However, the silver charcoal is extremely rare in the market. I only managed to gather the required amount half a day ago. They have all been placed in young master's room. Zhong Shou nodded slightly, a hint of joy appearing on his face. The marriage could be put aside for the time being. There was no rush. Right now, the most important thing was to refine that pill as soon as possible to solve the problem of his dual meridian body and recover the strength of his previous life as soon as possible. Zhong Shou hesitated for a moment before speaking again. Uncle Yin, if it's possible, it would be best if it could be done within 10 days. Find me a spirit weapon. No matter what type it was, he just needed to buy it. If you can't find one, you can change it to a high-grade talisman soldier. It would be best if it had a lightning talisman on it. Yin Yang was startled. This spirit weapon could only be used by out-of-body and Xiantian realm cultivators and spirit masters. It seemed too early for his young master to ask for such an item. Moreover, such a treasure was priceless. Within Cloud Saint City, there were probably less than 10 of them. As for a lightning element talisman soldier, it was easy to find. However, the Sky Fox clan bloodline was good at illusionary technique. Wouldn't it be better to buy a water element talisman soldier? Just as he was about to ask, Zhong Shou had already walked into the back courtyard. Xianyuan Iran and Li Yunyang didn't hesitate to stay in the courtyard. The former's place was beside Zhong Shou's room, saying that it was convenient for them to protect him. However, after choosing a place, the two women immediately left. No one knew where they went. Zhong Shou was speechless towards this woman, not bothering about her. He directly started to refine pills in his room. First, he used beast crystals and spiritual ink to lay out a spirit-gathering talisman formation. He placed the cauldron that Yin Yang bought at the center. He had learned the former before. Due to the spirit-gathering talisman, it was beneficial for martial cultivation. This was why Zhong Shou studied it deeply. In his last life, he didn't have a master. Be it martial cultivation or talismans, he taught himself from books. On the other hand, before he came to this era, he'd long since stopped being restricted by what was recorded in the books, and he'd fused the various talisman inheritances from the various worlds, causing him to already stand on his own. However, he focused on martial cultivation. As for other aspects, he was a total mess. For example, he didn't know anything about exorcism. The talisman formation that he drew now was far different from the current mainstream of the cloud world. The moment it was laid out, the spiritual energy increased by 3 times. Especially at the center, where the cauldron was, it was even thicker. However, when Zhong Shou sat in front of the cauldron, he felt a little nervous. He had learned a little about pill refining in the Shunhuang game in his last life. However, he didn't have much success in this area. After all, a person's energy was limited. It was impossible to learn so many things and not be affected. After all, a game was a game. No matter how real it was, it couldn't be the same as reality. Forget it, even if I haven't eaten pork, I have seen pigs walk. Anyways, I prepared so much silver charcoal and meridian spirit grass. Even if I fail a few times, it doesn't matter. Anyways, this pill is easy to refine. If I can't find a reliable person to refine it for me, in the future, I might even need to personally refine those famous recipes. This pill refining technique needs to be put in some effort. With that thought in mind, Zhong Shou gritted his teeth and finally started. The cauldron in front of him was the most basic type. It was made from pig iron and mixed in some black tungsten. Then, he drew a few talismans on it. It could barely be considered a talisman weapon. However, it was easy to control and didn't need to be adjusted when refining pills. As for the silver charcoal, as the name suggested, within the black charcoal, there were many silver threads. Not only was the temperature extremely high after burning, there was no smoke and the fire could last for a long time. Not only was it suitable for crafting weapons, but it was also a beginner item for pill refining. However, it was produced in small quantities. Legend had it that out of 10,000 kilograms of coal, one could only find 8 to 9 kilograms. Hence, it was extremely precious and worth a lot of gold. Zhong Shou carefully selected around 4 kilograms of silver charcoal and placed it under the cauldron. Although it wasn't much, it could burn for half a day. After spreading it out evenly, he lit the fire and started to heat up the cauldron. Zhong Shou started to fiddle with medicine. Meridian spirit grass and tens of other tonic. He crushed them all into a ball of liquid and threw it into the cauldron, following which, he formed hand signs and started to form hand seals. He controlled spiritual energy and used spirit talismans to cause the medicinal liquid in the cauldron to swirl. It was similar to when a chef was cooking. While the chef was cooking, he was cooking pills. From time to time, he had to change talismans to increase the temperature or suppress the temperature. Refining pills was simple. As long as one knew the pill recipe, it was easy to prepare the medicine. Especially in the future, one could be precise down to a millimeter. The hardest part was the control of the fire. The rise and fall of the temperature had a fixed time. Spiritual energy couldn't be thick all the time, and it also needed to be adjusted. This depended on the experience of the alchemist. No matter which high-grade alchemist it was, they had experienced thousands of failures and wasted countless herbs. Hence, they were even more precious than those blacksmiths. Every alchemist was roped in by those big families. In this aspect, Zhong Shou lacked the most. He didn't have a master to learn from. Apart from the little bit of experience he had in the game in his last life, he was completely blank. He could only slowly explore it himself. Chapter 96. As expected, refining pills can train one's control of spiritual energy. The changes in the medicinal properties, the changes in the talismans, it helps one to comprehend the path of heaven and earth. No wonder those alchemists aren't much slower than normal spirit masters. In the past, when Zhong Shou refined pills in the God Emperor game, He chose the idiot control method. Simply put, he didn't care and tossed it all to the system. Then, there was a certain success and failure rate. Whether or not the pill was formed depended on luck. Most players were like that. Some people, on the other hand, chose to control the fire themselves. All of them were really talented alchemists in the modern world. Just like how he used the virtual world to train his sword techniques and talisman techniques, these people also used the game to increase their pill refining experience. At this moment, when he personally refined pills, the feeling was different. Zhongshu was worried about the huge increase in his soul power. His soul ocean, which had expanded by tens of times, was about to lose control. At this moment, he decided to treat pill refining as his own cultivation. After sitting there for half a day, Zhongshu estimated that the time was enough. The firepower of the silver charcoal had started to weaken. He couldn't wait to open the lid of the cauldron, only to see that it was a sticky ball. Deep within the furnace was a ball of soft paste. There were only a few pill-shaped objects that were soft. Not enough firepower? Zhongshu curiously picked up those few pills. There was a bit of medicinal fragrance. However, it was sticky and sticky. Looking at it, no matter what, he didn't dare to put it into his mouth. Forget it, it's my first time refining pills. It's already giving me face that I didn't burn it. In 2 days I'll coax Shui to try one. He shook his head. This thing was different from the luck word talisman. As for whether it was a spiritual pill or a poison pill, he wasn't sure. Moreover, his heart ached for this brat and he didn't want her to suffer. Shui can't do it. Unfortunately, there won't be a chance. If not, I can let Li Yunyang try. Why not find cats and dogs to test the medicine? Keeping the few pills, Zhongshu didn't want to waste the medicinal paste. After rubbing it into pills, he wrapped it up. Following which, he started to refine pills once more. He had only bought about 60 kilograms of silver charcoal. Zhongshu ignored his exhaustion and opened the cauldron 5 times in a row, using almost half of the cauldron's power. After spending an entire day and night, the pills in the cauldron finally took shape. It resembled a dragon's eye, and it was pure black in color. Regardless of whether it was its smell, size, shape, or luster, it was identical to what was recorded in the book. Zhongshu suppressed his joy and rushed out of the room. He looked around. This courtyard was quiet and elegant, but there weren't any beasts or birds that he could test his pills on. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat, and he walked to the side of the pond. He took out a pill, crushed it, and threw it into the pond. Just as he was wondering in his heart, could it be that he also had such talent in refining pills? In just 4 tries, the pill had been formed. This level of skill was already comparable to those legendary genius alchemists. It was unknown whether the powder was affected by the smell or not. The goldfish in the pond were competing with each other. Following which, under his expectant gaze, those fish weakly flipped to the surface of the water. Samuraim's eyes lit up. This monster pill known as the Meridian Spirit Pill had such an effect, softening the meridians of the entire body. It was a special pill used in the future to correct the chakra meridians. It had few uses, but it was worth a city. In the next moment, he saw those goldfish flipping their bellies. They struggled with all their might and then they stopped breathing. Zhongshu was speechless. Standing on the spot like a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. The joy from before had disappeared without a trace. A cold wind blew over, causing his body to feel cold. Looking at the huge sun in the sky, he felt his entire body turn cold. This Meridian Spirit Pill is indeed a little difficult. Refining pills isn't easy, the ancients didn't lie to me. Just as he sighed, Chu Shui exclaimed, "Young master, did you go to dig coal? How did you become like this?" Zhongshu was slightly startled, looking at the pond. As expected, the silver charcoal wasn't completely smokeless. After a day and a night, his entire body was already dark and swarthy. His face had also turned black, leaving only a pair of distinct black and white eyes. His lips were red and his teeth were white, looking really eye-catching. Just as he was laughing bitterly in his heart, he saw Chu Shui look into the pond, her expression filled with shock. "Young master, you said you wanted to use the meridian spirit grass to refine pills to treat your dual meridian body. Were you actually refining a poison pill? Is it something that can be smeared on weapons or thrown into water to poison a large area? How quick!" She seemed to recall the time when Zhong Shou used a poison knife to force back Zhao Yanran. Chu Shui's eyes shone like stars. When Zhong Shou heard that, his face instantly flushed red, looking really awkward. However, in just a moment, he returned to normal. He scoffed, his expression calm and indiscernible. "It can't be considered a success, I'm just testing out the effects. Using meridian spirit grass to refine poison is something no one has done before, so I wanted to try it out. If this pill can be refined, even Xiantian experts can be taken down." As expected, Chu Shui's eyes were filled with worship. She was really looking forward to it, her expression filled with anticipation and anticipation. Suddenly, there were people who walked out from the corner in front of them. It was Xianyuan Iran and Li Yunyang. Looking at Zhong Shou, the two of them frowned. Following which, Xianyuan Iran's nose twitched as she asked curiously, "There's the smell of charcoal. This smell, is it medicine? I've never heard of it before, it's a little weird." A moment later, her eyes focused on Zhong Shou's right hand. She stepped off the ground and slid in front of Zhong Shou. She grabbed Zhong Shou's right hand that was touched by the powder and sniffed it. Her expression became weirder and weirder. In the end, she stuck out her small tongue and licked Zhong Shou's palm. Zhong Shou's body instantly shuddered, only feeling that his stomach was a little hot. As for Li Yunyang, her face was as black as a pot. Her needle-like gaze could pretty much slice Zhong Shou into thousands of pieces. Xianyuan Iran didn't find anything weird, carefully tasting the smell of the powder. Only then did her brows relax. Meridian spirit grass as the main ingredient, also adding in Japanese root, palm ginseng, ziwei. Inxiao, right, also Zhenjiang. Zhong Shou was stunned, staring in disbelief at Xianyuan Iran, who had left yesterday and returned today. There were 20 odd ingredients in this meridian spirit pill, and none of them were wrong. What was this woman's tongue made out of? Only to hear Xianyuan Iran say seriously, "Are you refining pills? The meridian spirit grass in Demon Corpse Mountain has slight poison and is seen as useless by pill refiners. Why are you using it to refine pills?" Zhong Shou wanted to say that he wasn't refining pills but poison when he saw Xianyuan Iran have an enlightened look, a bright glow exploding out of her eyes. No, the meridian spirit grass and Zhenjiang Ziwei can be used to soften the meridians in the body. The other ingredients are used to remove the poison. What an amazing pill recipe! Zhong Shou, you want to use this to solve your dual meridian body? If you can use it along with a suitable body technique, there is a chance. Zhong Shou's mouth was agape as he looked at Xianyuan Iran, thinking to himself that this girl was a demon? She just licked his palm and she could even guess that? In the next moment, he felt another pair of eyes looking at him. It was Shui, only her expression was filled with disdain. Chapter 97. Laughing dryly, Zhong Shou acted like he didn't see the piercing gazes from the side, smiling awkwardly. "This is the pill refined from the meridian spirit grass. I didn't expect Miss Xianyuan to be so good at pill refining. Respect, respect." Who knew that on the side of Xianyuan Iran, her face was filled with disdain. The medicinal theory is correct, but do you know how to refine pills? Do you understand medicine? Could it be that all the herbs were thrown into the cauldron to be refined? You really think you are smart, but you are really dumb. If you don't know how to refine pills, then don't waste these herbs. No matter how good Zhong Shou's temper was, at this moment, he was furious from embarrassment. Following which, he instantly became wary, his face turning solemn as he bowed respectfully towards Xianyuan Irin. Speaking of which, Miss Xianyuan definitely knows how to refine this meridian spirit pill? Zhong Shou indeed doesn't know much about pill refining. Young miss, please enlighten me. As the saying goes, if you don't know, you should ask. If you don't know, you shouldn't be ashamed to ask, so there was nothing to be embarrassed about. In his heart, he was also shocked. Just now, this woman's ability to differentiate between herbs was really extraordinary. Even those high-grade pill refiners in the future might not have such ability. Her pill refining skills definitely wouldn't be too bad. When Xianyuan Irin heard that, she frowned as expected, the expression on her face turning calm. If you want to refine this pill, you have to wait for 45 minutes before adding in the silver and palm. As for the other few, you need to choose the right time. If not, this pill will turn into a poison pill like you are doing now. Apart from that, after the herbs boil, you need to use the first 7 seals of the 12 Danxian seals to control the pill and expel the poison. When you open the furnace, you need to use the energy controlling technique to retract the pill and disperse the fire. Halfway through her words, Zhong Shou was at a loss, his face filled with confusion. Xianyuan Irin couldn't help but feel helpless. Forget it, even if I tell you the method, you won't be able to refine this pill. This involves some secret techniques of my sect, no wonder you don't know. I will just refine this meridian spirit pill for you. But if you succeed, you'll have to tell me where you got the recipe for the meridian spirit pill from. Where did this come from? If you're interested in learning, you can come in and watch. The tip of his nose sniffed and then followed the smell of the charcoal directly into Zhong Shou's room. Zhong Shou was startled, wondering why this girl's personality was so impatient. Before he even told her the complete pill formula, she had already started to refine it. Even if he knew the composition of the medicinal herbs, he wouldn't be able to guess the exact amount. How could he forge pills like that? At this moment, Li Yunyang also walked over. His eyes were filled with killing intent, even colder than yesterday. But it's strange that Miss also knows how to refine pills? Miss was accepted into the Pill Fountain sect 7 years ago. After only 3 years of learning, he was chosen by old man Ming Dan to be his last disciple. He was given the title of the number 1 Pill Dao talent in the sect, and he only needed 30 years to obtain all of his true teachings. Forget it, why do I have to tell you all this? Xinshao sect, Pill Fountain sect, your father probably won't tell you about them, it's a waste of breath. Her words were filled with disdain. It was like she was too lazy to continue talking to Zhong Shou. You only need to know that with Mrs. Identity, she isn't someone you, who can't even open your chakra meridians, can look up to. Even if one day she can solve your dual meridian body, you aren't worthy of her. If you have any self-awareness, then scram far away and stop bothering Miss. Her voice was as soft as a thread, only reaching 5 feet. However, Zhong Shou could hear everything clearly. Chu Shui's watery eyes opened wide, and she was about to fall out with this girl. Zhong Shou pulled her back, his face smiling. Pill Fountain sect? Zhong Shou has heard of them, 7th of the 19 spiritual houses, right? I heard that their strength is comparable to the last 3 of the 10 shrines, and they specialize in pill refining. As for the mysterious Cloud Spirit sect, I have heard of them. 3rd of the 19 spiritual houses, their lightning spells are really amazing. Li Yunyang was startled, and then she laughed coldly. It's good that you know. Oh right, since Miss personally made your meridian spirit pill, she should be able to refine it in a day and a half. At that time, you can just come and get it. Her pill refining skills involve the secrets of her sect, so it's best if you don't watch from the side. After she said that, she walked into Zhong Shou's room. Just as Zhong Shou was about to be thick-skinned and follow in, the door closed with a "pa" sound. Chu Shui was furious when she saw that, spitting out her tongue towards the door. She scoffed, so arrogant, what are you being cocky for? She wasn't the one who became the disciple of old man Ming Dan. Also, don't bother me anymore, you were the ones who walked over. It wasn't young master who bothered you. Young master, if that girl knew that you have reached the out-of-body realm in just a few months and can travel at night without any problems, would her jaw drop? Oh right, your sword path is one with the spirit. She still didn't know what sword path being one with the spirit meant. However, since it could make that Zhao Yinran so shocked. Even Lei Dong, who was an ascended martial ancestor, was shocked. It must be an amazing thing, even more amazing than the out-of-body realm. Even the day before when he was at the spirit cultivation realm and killed that Xiantian master, it was Zhong Shou. Zhong Shou burst out laughing when he heard that, flicking Chu Shui's head. I think you are the cocky one. This little ability is nothing in the eyes of those big sections. Don't say it out loud and let people laugh at you. Looking at his room door with slight resentment, Zhong Shou shook his head. Such a rare chance was ruined just like that. It was like that in his last life. Who knows how many times he wanted to take a look at the secret techniques of those big sects but couldn't get it. He had completely relied on himself to figure out the martial Dao intent and the talisman technique. However, they were all unorthodox and didn't form a system. At this moment, there was no hope for him to watch from the side, so he had to find something else to do. Should he go to the back courtyard to train a set of fist techniques and wait for Xianyuan Iran's meridian spirit pill to come out? Or should he try to use his soul to go out of body to further understand this realm? Suddenly, his heart moved. Zhong Shou turned his head and asked Chu Shui, "Is there any news of the sword that Uncle Yin is looking for?" Chu Shui was originally pouting, her little hand touching her head. When she heard that, she didn't dare to be slow. She hurriedly ran to the front courtyard. In just a moment she carried a sword back, saying happily, "I found it. Yesterday Uncle Yin had already found it. It is the pinnacle grade lightning tooth sword. I spent a full 20 grade 3 beast crystals." Samuraim's eyes lit up. After taking the sword, he pulled it out. Only to see that the sword was a green-blue color, on it there were lightning arcs flashing. Grade 3 beast crystals were 1,000 gold, 100,000 silver. 20 of them would be 20,000 gold. In the past, when he was at the treasure weapon house, he spent a grade 3 beast crystal to order a pine pattern wind sword. This sword was 2 grades higher than the pine pattern wind sword and was also a rare item. This price was already a little cheap. Just as he was about to activate his soul power to activate the runes on the sword, only to hear Chu Shui open her mouth, "There is also a spiritual weapon. Uncle Yin searched for half a day. Although there is one in the city, no one is willing to sell it. However, Uncle Yin heard that there is a pawn shop in Cloud Saint City that is auctioning a spiritual weapon, so he went there to wait. I heard that a year ago, someone used that sword to exchange for 100 grade 3 beast crystals. Till now, no one has come to take it." Chapter 98. Spiritual Sword? Only pawning it for 100 grade 3 beast crystals? Zhong Shou was startled, following which he clicked his tongue. This pawn shop really earned a lot. Chu Shui nodded her head in agreement. The crafting of a spiritual sword was much harder than a talisman sword. The materials used were often extremely rare. Even the worst spiritual weapon would be 10 times more expensive than the lightning tooth sword in Zhong Shou's hand. Sometimes even if one had money, one wouldn't be able to buy it, just like what they were doing now. 100 grade 3 beast crystals for a spiritual weapon, this business was really profitable. After exclaiming, Zhong Shou felt that the lightning tooth sword in his hands, which had surprised him just now, was a little useless. The reason why Yin Yang found a top-grade talisman sword was because he had learned a secret technique in his last life to nurture a sword, along with the unique sword washing technique and the strengthening of little gold. It could allow a talisman weapon to have a portion of the abilities of a spiritual weapon. Who knew that there would be such a surprise in Cloud Saint City? Placing the sword in his hands at his waist, Samuraim's eyes shone. In just a short moment, he said decisively, "Forget it, this place is boring. Let's go take a look on the streets." Chu Shui blinked her eyes in shock, but she didn't object. She knew that with Zhong Shou's current ability, as long as he was in Cloud Saint City, no one would be able to hurt him. Since he was at the spirit cultivation realm, he could kill Xiantian masters. Now that he could travel at night, naturally he didn't fear anything. The place where the pawnshop auctioned items was at the west of the city, a tea house beside the river. After all, it wasn't as professional as in the future where there were many auction houses. What they were doing now was to gather all the rich and powerful people in the city together and start selling after they had stored enough goods in the storehouse. However, before Zhong Shou rushed over, he went to the weapon shop that ordered talisman knives. The 50 cloud pattern talisman knives weren't made yet. However, he didn't come here to get knives. He drew some scattered parts and placed an order here. It was also an external bone, but it was different from the previous wind travel spirit bone. The latter only required a small amount of soul power to activate, but it could only be used for walking. If one had enough energy, it could be used for several days and nights. Its weakness was that it could not be used in battle, and its strength was not very high. At this moment, Zhong Shou had customized an external bone that could be said to be at the entry level. Not only was it not easy to damage, it could also increase one's strength by nearly 5,000 jin. However, the amount of soul force required was 10 times more than before. He also felt that the wind-walking spirit bone had dropped the ball halfway. This time, Zhong Shou ordered 2 sets, as well as some key spare parts in case of replacement. The forging itself was not difficult and was similar to forging a middle-level seal soldier. Coincidentally, the delivery date was the same as the talisman knife. When Zhong Shou arrived at the tea house, he saw that not only was the place exquisite, but it was also located by the river. The scenery was beautiful, and it added a bit of elegance. However, in the vicinity of the tea house, there were groups of armored soldiers guarding the area. They were all muscular men, grade 4 and above martial masters, and they were all filled with killing intent. He could also feel the aura of tens of Xiantian experts around, which surprised him. Zhong Shou was also at a loss. It was just a spiritual weapon. Was there a need for such a huge formation? Could it be that the highlight of today's auction was something else? He didn't understand, but he still stepped into the tea house. His clothes were luxurious, and the guards didn't stop him. Then, he saw that the building was already filled with people. However, Yin Yang had booked a private room on the 2nd floor of the restaurant. Who knows if it was because this pawnshop knew about their wealth, or because of the Cloud Saint City Lord. When they met, Yin Yang frowned, his face filled with worry. Although this place is within the city, there are all sorts of people here. No matter how well the Cloud Saint City protects, there will be times when they are careless. How can young master take the risk? Zhong Shou looked at Chu Shui, only to see the latter scratching her face in embarrassment. He knew that this girl most probably didn't tell Yin Yang about him. As for the Cloud Saint City Lord, he could see that he didn't plan to have any connections with him. As a city lord, he didn't travel far, but he wasn't in the city for several days. How was that possible? It was probably because of Lei Dong that he took care of him. Since he wasn't willing to meet him, Zhong Shou wasn't so thick-skinned as to stick to him. Such a situation was for the best. There were too many people here, and it wasn't easy to explain to Yin Yang. Zhong Shou giggled as he touched his nose, not saying a word as he walked into the room and sat down. The windows on both sides were opened, and one side was able to look into the inner hall of the tea house. However, the moment Zhong Shou sat down, he saw a confused gaze looking over at him from the opposite side. Zhong Shou was also stunned, only to see a person standing in the corridor outside the window. It was Zhongling. That gaze was a little shocked before it turned into a teasing one, Cousin actually has the mood to come here to watch the show at such a time. It seems like these few days in Cloud Saint City have been really happy. Beside him, Feng Xiao was also there, but he didn't make a sound. His expression was solemn as he looked at Yin Yang, who had stepped into the Xiantian realm, his expression changing. Zhong Shoxin sighed in his heart. Why were the two of them like dog-skin plasters? So clingy. No matter where he went, he would meet them, following which he heard a soft scoff. Do you really think that this small Cloud Saint City lord can protect you? There are numerous experts in Donglin Cloud Continent. Even in the east of Donglin Cloud Continent, there are 4 powers stronger than Cloud Saint City. There are many people who can deal with him. Do you know that the purple lightning spear under 7th brother Zongyang has personally come here? While Zhongling spoke, his gaze looked to the other side. Zhong Shou followed his gaze and looked over, only to see a person wearing a golden robe sitting in another suite. His back was as straight as a spear, his sitting posture so dignified that one couldn't find anything wrong with it. He was around 20 years old. His face inherited the handsomeness of the Sky Fox bloodline, but it was extremely cold. Beside him was a spear wrapped in cloth. He expressionlessly looked at Zhong Shou before retracting his gaze, like he wasn't interested in him at all. Although there were 2 Xiantian masters beside him, they were covered by this person's sharpness, such that one didn't notice them. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed. After obtaining the memories of the past 13 years, he roughly knew the situation of Gantian Mountain. He also had an impression of this person. It was said that he was a member of the Sky Fox Zhong family, the most outstanding person in this generation of side bloodline disciples. He was recruited by Zhong Yang's branch, and was extremely loyal to them. In the past, Zhong Weiran also felt that it was a pity, personally calling him a talent in front of him. Not only was he regretful that he couldn't be used by him, but he was also a side bloodline disciple. Even if his talent wasn't weaker than the direct bloodline, he was destined to be a chess piece for others. Strength of the martial path? Not bad. Squinting his eyes, Zhong Shou instantly had a rough idea of this person's strength. He should be the peak of Xiantian Master, 3 meridians of the Earth Chakra level. However, what he cared about more was that the appearance of this purple lightning spear here meant that the situation of Gantian Mountain had changed. In the next moment, he heard Zhongling scoff coldly, "However, cousin, you are really lucky." Chapter 99. As for Zhong Shou's luck, what was so good about it? Zhongling didn't elaborate. He directly walked past and sat down in a room not far away. As for Huang Xiao, before he left, he looked at Yin Yang and said, "That purple lightning spear Zhong Yuan didn't come to Cloud Saint City to kill the prince. However, Brother Yin needs to be careful. Do you know that 6 days ago that person from Yunxiao Mountain sent 2,000 fire wolf cavalry to enter Dongwei Mountain?" Yin Yang's brows tensed up, slightly nodding his head as a reply. He didn't comment and didn't say whether or not he believed it. In Zhong Shou's heart, he thought to himself that it was as expected. The situation of Gantian Mountain had changed. Dongwei Mountain was a place that was also located west of Donglin Cloud Continent. It was 3,700 miles south of Gantian Mountain. Not only was it a strategic location, but it was also really close to ancient Crane City that Gantian Mountain controlled. If one used the wind-stepping foals to gallop at full speed, it would only take 2 hours. As for the Fire Wolf Cavalry, they were really famous in Donglin Cloud Continent. It was said that the weakest one was a Grade 5 Martial Master, and there were hundreds of Mythic Masters. Moreover, it was an army made up of young men from the Fire Wolf race who were born with the ability to control fire. They were one of the most elite forces of Yunxiao Mountain. As for the specific situation, Zhong Shou wasn't too sure. He only knew that ancient Crane City was the support of Gantian Mountain in the south. Many cities rose up in Donglin Cloud Continent, intersecting with one another. There were even countries within countries. Although Gantian Mountain controlled millions of monsters in 4 provinces, it didn't include all the humans in the region. They only controlled tens of monster race cities spread out all over. As they were strong, there were many human race cities that relied on the wings of Gantian Mountain. This ancient crane city was not only a strategic pass, but it was also a trading center. It also controlled a province of monster race, as well as tens of human race cities within 1,000 miles. Once it was taken down, thousands of miles south of Gantian Mountain would fall into the hands of the enemy. Before this, there were no external enemies. Zhong Shi and Zhong Yang fought so hard for the Monster King position. Zhong Shi was also in a precarious situation. However, with a huge enemy on the side, if they wanted to ensure that Gantian Mountain didn't lose power, they needed to work together to face the enemy. If they lost this foundation, it would not benefit anyone. If he died now, it would be a disaster for Gantian Mountain. The collapse of the people's hearts was to be expected. Even if those 3 still wanted to make a move on him. The many race leaders of Gantian Mountain, and even the elders of the Sky Fox Zhong family most probably wouldn't agree. Thinking of this, Zhong Shi could not help but laugh. So that was the case. The reason why he was able to keep his life after being chased out of the Soaring Cloud sect and become the Demon King for a few years was probably because of this Yunxia Mountain. Since the east wind could not suppress the west wind and no one could gain an advantage, then it was naturally the best choice to support a puppet that everyone could accept. However, in his heart, he was shocked. The people of Yunxia Mountain were just too dumb. If it was him, wouldn't it be better if he kept his claws and waited for the enemy to fall into chaos? They were so impatient to let the 2,000 Fire Wolf cavalry enter Dongwei Mountain. That was really dumb. Who was the Monster King of Yunxia Mountain? He didn't remember. Logically speaking, to be able to use the strength of 3 provinces to go up against Zhong Weiran for 5 years and only be at a disadvantage, he shouldn't be a dumb person. Was there another reason? Just as Zhong Shi was having random thoughts, he saw Huang Xiao smile at him. The prince needs to be careful. Gantian Mountain still needs the prince to inherit. Not only the people of Yunxia Mountain, but even Blazing Flame Mountain might attack the prince. Although the Purple Lightning Spear has arrived in Cloud Saint City, the head of the Yunxia 7 Swords of Yunxia Mountain has also arrived a day ago and is right here. After he finished, he bowed respectfully. Only then did he leave and enter Zhongling's room. Zhong Shi was at a loss. He knew that the Purple Lightning Spear was Zhong Yuan because he was from the Sky Fox Zhong family. As for the Yunxia Mountain 9 swords that Huang Xiao mentioned, he had never heard of it before. Yin Yang's body shook, his sharp gaze sweeping around. In just a moment, he focused on the hall below. At a round table in the far left corner, a middle-aged man in black with a thin face was sitting alone. The seats beside him were all empty, but no one dared to get close. Seemingly noticing Yin Yang's gaze, that person swept back before turning his head around. He had a centipede tattoo on his face, making him look really vicious. His gaze was extremely cold. Zhong Shi's eyes constricted. This person was actually an Earth Chakra 3 Meridian, the peak of the Xiantian Master. After a martial master entered the Earth Chakra realm, each additional chakra meridian opened would cause a huge change in their strength. The old man who died at the hands of Zhong Shi that day was only an Earth Chakra 2 Meridian. In Blood Spirit Valley, his strength was limited. And the person in front of him was the same as the Purple Lightning Spear. He already had the strength of the martial path. He was just half a step away from the martial ancestor realm. Just as he wanted to ask Yin Yang about the background of this person, the entire tea house suddenly quietened down. Only to see over 10 green-robed men escorting an old man to the center of the tea house. In their hands, they each held a tray that was covered by a silk cloth. They placed them on a table in an orderly manner. That old man first cupped his hands towards the surroundings and said a few words. It was something along the lines of being loved by everyone and being extremely grateful. Just as Chu Shui was getting impatient, the old man opened his mouth. Only then did the man stop talking and lift the silk cloth on the first tray. Surprisingly, it was a sword that lay quietly within it. Pure black in color, the sword was covered in wavy patterns. The entire tea-house was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. No matter if they were martial cultivators or spirit masters, their gazes were all burning as they looked within the tray. Only to hear the old man explain, "All of you should know about it. This item is something a year ago that a Xiantian master used 100 grade 3 beast crystals as collateral. Now that the collateral period has passed, it can be sold. Whether or not it is real or fake, all of you can sense it and you will know. Today we will use 100 grade 3 beast crystals as the base price. The highest bidder will get it." When those words were said, the tea-house was still completely silent. Everyone looked on quietly but didn't bid. Although this sword was precious, apart from Xiantian masters and spirit cultivators, it was useless for others to buy it. On the contrary, it would cause problems. That old man wasn't in a rush. He knew that there were only a few people here who had the right to bid for this sword. He didn't rush them and just waited quietly. Zhong Shou also looked at the spiritual sword, his eyes filled with doubt. This black wave sword did not surprise him in any way. It couldn't be any more normal. Out of spiritual weapons, it could only be considered one of the weakest. But just now, when his eyes met hers, there was a mysterious feeling in his heart that was similar to telepathy. This is rhythm? Weird. Who knows who the owner of this sword is to be able to nurture the sword rhythm into the sword? He probably brought it along with him for 30 to 50 years and it isn't damaged at all. No, it doesn't seem right. This feeling is unbreakable, nothing it can't break. How can it merge into one with a water element black wave sword? That sword rhythm was faintly discernible, hidden and not visible. Other people couldn't sense it, but Zhong Shou, who was extremely sensitive to martial intent, definitely wouldn't miss it. Chapter 100. A little weird. Just as Zhong Shou was in deep thought, there were already people bidding. It directly went to 200 grade 3 beast crystals, and then continued to climb until it reached 400 before slowing down. This was close to the normal price of the black wave sword, and there were only a few people who continued to bid, all of them in a few rooms. Zhong Shou once again looked at the sword, and only when there were no more people bidding did he make a 9 sign towards Yin Yang. When Yin Yang saw that, although he was a little surprised, he didn't plan to go against Zhong Shou's intentions. However, before he was able to open his mouth, Chu Shui excitedly ran to the window and said, "My young master said 900 grade 3 beast crystals." In an instant, countless inquisitive gazes came out from the tea-house and looked in all directions. They weren't shocked, but their eyes were filled with surprise. There were many grade 3 beasts in the world. However, to form a qualified grade 3 beast crystal, it would take tens of years of accumulation. Often when it was formed, these beasts were already standing at the peak of grade 3. Which was why, although there were many mythic masters who hunted beasts for a living, even if they spent their entire lives, they would at most be able to form 5 to 600. 900 grade 3 beast crystals was close to double the price of this black wave sword. It was enough to buy a grade 1 spiritual sword that was crafted well. Most of the gazes that looked over were filled with disdain. Zhongling, who was not far away, was the same. She stared over with a "you are really stupid" expression. Zhong Shou didn't bother, quietly waiting for the result. After a few breaths, no one made a bid. Just as that old man was prepared to give up waiting, a low voice sounded out from below, 1,000 grade 3 beast crystals. Zhong Shou looked over, only to see that the person who spoke was the black-shirt middle-aged man sitting alone in the corner. At this moment, the people in the tea house were all shocked. What was weird was that when Zhong Shou made a bid of 900, everyone treated him as an idiot. However, when the black-shirt middle-aged man raised the price to 1,000, no one dared to underestimate him. Instead, they once again sized up the sword, trying to find what was special about it. Shaking his head to himself, Zhong Shou didn't hesitate, once again stretching out 5 fingers towards Chu Shui. Chu Shui instantly understood, once again shouting towards the window, 5,000 grade 3 beast crystals. This time, most of the rich people here couldn't breathe. Many of the people here couldn't even save a tenth of this price. 5,000 beast crystals were more than enough to buy the lives of 3 to 5 Xiantian masters. Who knew who was within the room? Just for this ordinary-looking sword, to bid such a shocking number. That black-shirt middle-aged man's expression didn't change, taking in a deep breath before opening his mouth once more. 5,001. Zhong Shou grinned, waving his index finger towards Chu Shui. However, this time it wasn't only Yin Yang who frowned. Even Chu Shui hesitated. Being stared at by Zhong Shou, she barely opened her mouth. 10,000 grade 3 beast crystals. The moment she said that, Zhongling couldn't help but scold out, "Zhong Shou, I think you're crazy. Argantian Mountain has 7 million people, 3,000 mythic masters, and we only hunt 200,000 grade 3 beasts a year. Along with the contributions from the cities, we only get 100,000 grade 3 beast crystals a year. You spent 10,000 grade 3 beast crystals just for a broken sword? Even if you want to squander, you don't have to squander like this? What's so special about that sword? I don't believe that someone who hasn't even opened his chakra meridians can see through it." Zhong Shou was unperturbed, not bothering at all. In his last life he was used to being poor, and every day he spent carefully. In this life his luck was good, becoming the prince of the Monster King, a disciple of a big family with billions of dollars. Naturally, he couldn't be stingy. This feeling of using money to suppress people and not treating the beast crystals as a big deal felt really good. As for that Zhongling, he couldn't be bothered to bother about her. What does it have to do with you if I use mine? If I don't use up all these beast crystals, do I have to wait for the spiritual wave to devalue? Today 1 grade 3 beast crystal was worth 1,000 gold. However, if it was 2 years later, 100 gold would be too high. The black-shirt middle-aged man downstairs looked over once more. His eyes were filled with no anger. He laughed, filled with disdain. What an idiot! The people at the side were startled, but in just a moment they understood. The person in the corner was most likely just making fun of the person in the private room upstairs. Immediately, he smiled. The old man hosting the auction also smiled happily, but he was also a little worried. No one would have thought that an ordinary black wave sword could be sold for a sky-high price of 10,000 pieces. This sword was only pawned for 100 grade 3 beast crystals, but he earned 99 times the price. However, with such a high price, how could the person who bid take it out? It wasn't until another shopkeeper-like person whispered a few words in his ear that the old man's face was filled with joy. He waved his hand and asked someone to send the sword to Zhong Shou's suite. He even found a witness from the Sanlu Bank and wrote down the proof, like he was afraid that Zhong Shou would go back on his word. Only when these few people left in satisfaction did they leave. Zhong Shou picked up the black wave sword and placed it in his hand to take a good look. At this moment, the items being auctioned were pills and talismans for martial cultivators and spirit masters. There were also antiques and some house deed. Zhong Shou wasn't interested at all, only focusing on studying the sword in his hand. Zhong Ling was still cursing and scolding in the private room. He seemed to be a little tired, and his tone was filled with mockery. The ruler has been a hero for his entire life. How did he give birth to such a dumb son? If the spirit in the underworld knew that his life savings were squandered by you, would he spit out blood from anger? Dual meridian body, not being able to cultivate is okay, but his brain is actually so dumb? Which one of the people of Yunxia Mountain didn't go back on their word? If the price is too high and he directly goes back on his words, who can do anything to him? You are so dumb. Zhongling was blabbering on the other side there was a cold gaze that looked over. It was Purple Lightning Spear Zhong Yuan. Zhong Shou acted like he didn't see or hear anything. Although Chu Shui was angry, at this moment she felt weak. She couldn't find any words to retort. Only Yin Yang's expression didn't change, looking seriously at the black wave sword like he wanted to help Zhong Shou find out what was so valuable about this sword. As expected, it is a little weird. Zhong Shou looked at it for a moment before flicking the body of the sword, giving out a ding that didn't stop for a long time. Listening for a moment, Zhong Shou focused his gaze on the handle of the sword. Although the sword body was black and swarthy, the handle was inlaid with 10 pearls, and there were tens of weird talismans drawn on it. Zhong Shou tried, plucking all the pearls and playing with them for a moment. Then, Yin Yang and Chu Shui only heard a cracking sound. In the next moment, numerous tightly sealed energy seemed to have found an outlet and charged out. It pierced numerous transparent holes in the wooden walls. Then, a sharp energy suddenly rose up, forcefully breaking open the roof of Zhong Shou's room. In Zhong Shou's hand, a small sword appeared. It was 2 feet long and shone with a cold light. At this moment, the gazes of everyone in the tea house looked over once more. This time, they were not only shocked. It's a grade 3 spiritual weapon. Chapter 101. The slightly skilled martial cultivators in the restaurant could only sense that it was a grade 3 spiritual weapon. Those Xiantian masters all stood up abruptly. They were all attracted by the sharp intent, their eyes filled with shock as they looked towards Zhong Shou's room. Their gazes slowly heated up, their expressions filled with disbelief. It's sword intent, it's actually sword intent. There's actually such a profound principle within the black wave sword. Zhongling was startled, looking at the scene in front of him at a loss, not knowing how to react. Although he hadn't reached the Xiantian realm, he had learned a lot from his family. He knew that this sword wasn't ordinary, and he could barely sense the martial path intent within the short sword. So there is a sword within a sword. Zhong Shou broke out into a laugh as he looked carefully. He thought to himself, no wonder it felt so strange. Using metal to produce water, not only could it nurture this black wave sword, he could also make use of the layers of water element talismans to cover the extremely sharp sword intent on the metal element spiritual sword. Speaking of which, not only the short sword in his hand, but even the black wave sword that was like a sword sheath was also extraordinary. He raised his brows and looked over. As expected, the other pure black sword beside him was also giving off a faint spiritual light. Without restricting the martial path sword intent within, the body of the black wave sword seemed to have some more water patterns, flickering on and off, looking extremely beautiful. However, when his eyes looked out of the window once more, he saw that the purple lightning spear Zhong Yuan had instinctively grabbed onto the spear bag beside him, his eyes shining brightly. The black-shirt middle-aged man below also squinted his eyes, his hand holding onto the hilt of his sword. The other few Xiantian masters all breathed heavily, their eyes filled with a fierce glow as they looked on hesitantly. In the distance, there were a few people who had locked onto him from afar. The atmosphere in the tea-house became extremely cold in an instant. It also caused the rich merchants and nobles of Cloud Saint City to break out in cold sweat, not daring to move at all. For all martial cultivators above the Xiantian martial master level, other than Qi refinement, martial Dao intent was also crucial. Rhythm, force, intent, spirit, soul, and spirit. As long as a martial artist had some achievements in these aspects, not only would their battle prowess increase, they would also be able to break through talisman techniques and fight against spirit masters. It was the best aid in breaking through the heaven and earth chakra meridian. Of the Xiantian masters gathered here, only Zhong Yuan and the head of the Yunxia Seven Swords had comprehended the force of the martial path. The others had only reached the rhythm level. The path it walked was also slightly different from the sharp sword intent on the sword that could break through anything. However, if he could comprehend this sword, he would definitely have a breakthrough. Zhong Shou wasn't surprised at all. He calmly waved the short sword in his hand towards the outside. I don't have any use for this thing. It just so happens that there are so many heroes gathered here today. Why don't we use this treasure land to hold an auction as well? The starting price is 3,000 grade 4 beast crystals, the highest bid wins. Or we can exchange items for items. Pills are best, talismans that can be used are also okay. While he spoke expressionlessly, Zhong Shou's left hand was still on the black wave sword. Threads of spiritual energy injected into it as he smiled. Today, if someone dared to snatch it, he wouldn't mind sacrificing blood to this sword. Today, he needed a head to show his might. Within the entire tea house, there was a slight commotion before it regained silence. A grade 3 beast crystal was worth 100,000 silver. Grade 2 beast crystals were around 10,000 silver. It was the same for grade 1. It was a difference of 10 times. Once it reached grade 4, the difference was close to 100 times. Not only were there very few Xiantian realm beasts, but they were also hard to hunt. 3,000 grade 4 beast crystals had already exceeded the price that Zhong Shou paid for the black wave sword. However, at this moment no one felt that it was expensive. A normal grade 1 spiritual weapon was around 500 grade 3 beast crystals to 1,000. However, a grade 3 spiritual weapon's price rose by tens of times. The martial path intent contained within caused the price of this sword to increase once more. Not only could one comprehend the sword intent and use it to aid in battle, but one could also use the martial path intent within. Although this sword was only grade 3, it had the power of a grade 5 spiritual weapon power. Not to mention 10 times, even 100 times was worth it. However, the people present were still silent. They all kept silent and exchanged glances. The sword made people drool. Zhong Shou's price wasn't high. However, 3,000 grade 4 beast crystals was a price that no one in the tea house could afford. The spear in Zhong Yuan's hand had already been taken out from the holster. The green-blue spear body and purple-red spear blade were shining with a metallic glow. His hand loosened and tightened and loosened like he was weighing the pros and cons. The vicious intent in his eyes was like a flood. The black-shirt middle-aged man below was the same. His hand rubbed the sword handle like he was choosing the best time to attack. However, just as the atmosphere was slowly becoming tense and on the verge of exploding, a cold voice suddenly rang out within the tea house. What a good broken blade sword! Along with those words, a white-robed man suddenly walked out from a room near the river. The moment this person appeared, there seemed to be a cooling intent that seeped into the hearts of everyone. It caused the heavy atmosphere in the tea house to instantly slow down. Even Zhong Yuan, whose killing intent was boiling, frowned slightly. He couldn't raise up any fighting intent. The spear in his hand seemed to have become unfamiliar, unable to stab out at all. The man's face was filled with a smile as he looked at the spear in Zhong Shou's hand. I originally had a sudden idea to see what a grade 4 mutated cloud whale baby looked like. Who knew that I would bump into this spiritual weapon? My Lingyun sect has been searching for this sword for 200 years, but we still couldn't find it. So it was hidden within this black wave sword. Prince Zhong really has good luck this time. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed. Actually, just by looking at his clothing, he knew that this white-robed man was definitely a Lingyun disciple. In his heart, he felt slightly disappointed. He had other intentions for taking out this sword. He wanted to kill him, but who knew that he would bump into this person? Today, he probably wouldn't be able to get what he wanted. Who would have thought that a Lingyun sect disciple would coincidentally appear in such a place? As expected, in the next moment, a small pill bottle appeared in the right hand of the white-robed teen. He held it in his palm. Since Prince asked for 3,000 grade 4 beast crystals, then how about I Zhu Renquang buy this broken blade sword? The value of this sword is no less than a grade 5 spiritual weapon. I don't have many beast crystals, but I won't take advantage of you. 2 human pinnacle pills are worth 3,600 grade 4 beast crystals. I will exchange for this sword with other items. A buzzing sound suddenly rose up from the ground. Numerous people were whispering to one another. No one was paying attention to the sword in Zhong Shou's hand. A large half of the people were looking at the sword in Zhu Renquang's hand. A human pinnacle pill only needed 3 to 5 years to allow a person who had never cultivated to step into the Xiantian realm. Xiantian masters were not only strong in martial arts, their lifespan would also increase, and they could live 50 more years than normal people who didn't cultivate. Some people who took good care of their bodies could live up to 180 years old. This was why, although Zhong Shou's broken blade sword was more valuable, within this tea house, it wasn't as eye-catching as this human pinnacle pill. Chapter 103. Zhong Yuan's face was dark and sunken. His eyes were burning as he looked at the pill bottle. Zhong Shou's broken blade sword could allow him to comprehend a stronger spear strength. As for this human pinnacle pill, it could make his internal cultivation foundations even firmer. No matter which one it was enough for a Xiantian master like him to dream of. He silently kept the spear back into the cloth case and sat down once more. That black-shirt middle-aged man did the same, retracting his hand from the sword at his waist. Although the human pinnacle pill was good, it was something that Zhu Renquang took out. The broken blade sword was something that many people coveted, but it was something that Zhu Renquang wanted. In Donglin Cloud Continent, apart from those hidden sections, which force could be stronger than the Lingyun sect? Even if they didn't fear him, at this moment, no one was the opponent of Zhu Renquang. There were so many Xiantian masters here, so who would dare to be arrogant in front of him? Zhong Shou sighed as he looked at the pill bottle. After a short while, he shook his head. This human pinnacle pill is not bad, but it is useless to me. If I want to exchange for items, Zhong Shou would rather have beast crystals. Same grade beast spirit stones are also okay. Since he couldn't kill him to show his might, then it wasn't bad to exchange for something from this person. Zhu Renquang was startled, his brows furrowing. I know that the prince is a dual meridian body and can't cultivate. However, your 2 servants can use my 2 human pinnacle pills. However, when his gaze swept across Yin Yang and Chu Shui, he understood, so that's the case. One of you has a solid foundation and doesn't need external help. The other has already consumed a human pinnacle pill a few days ago. No wonder you don't like my pill. Taking in a deep breath, Zhu Renquang smiled. Then how about adding this item? Although the prince most probably won't be able to use it, these few items added together can barely be compared to this human pinnacle pill. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out a silver-white crystal and threw it into the box along with the bottle of pills. Zhong Shou caught it in his hand, and without looking at it carefully, he threw the broken blade sword to Zhu Renquang. He knew that this was the lowest price that this person could offer. He had already made a lot of money, so he wouldn't be able to extort anything else. If he continued to raise the price, this Zhu Renquang might just flick his sleeves and leave on the spot. After throwing the sword away, he finally had the time to look at the item in his hand. He didn't even need to open the bottle to know that it was genuine. A large sect like the Cloud-Soaring sect would not go so far as to resort to swindling. What caught his attention was the crystal. Its surface was silvery white, sparkling and extremely dazzling. When he touched it in his hand, it felt like amber. It should be a level 6 soul stone. However, A silver bear with its arms open and roaring could be faintly seen sealed within. Outside of the surface, there were tens of runes carved on it, simple and mysterious. Its aura was retracted, and it looked like a normal soul stone. So it was a protector spirit beast that sealed the soul of a level 6 elite beast within the soul stone. Its grade only dropped by a grade, so most of the strength of the beast when it was alive could be preserved. The person who made this spirit beast was definitely Day Wandering Realm and above. Most probably also skilled in talismans. No wonder that Zhu Renquang would say that he most probably had no use for this item. Logically speaking, to subdue this protector spirit beast, one would at least need to be at the Night Wandering Realm. Zhong Shou's eyes flashed, and without making a sound, he kept the soul stone into his sleeves. Following which he smiled towards Chu Shui. Shui, come over and open your mouth, ah. Chu Shui instinctively wanted to open her cherry lips, but in that instant she thought back to 2 days ago. Her brows furrowed, hesitantly moving to the side of Zhong Shou, saying bitterly, "Young master, do we still have to run?" Actually, that human pinnacle pill was really sweet, even more delicious than candy. However, when she thought back to the torture of Zhong Shou, Chu Shui was a little worried. "Why do you speak so much nonsense?" Zhong Shou directly kicked her leg, and Chu Shui's body instantly felt numb. Her mouth couldn't help but open, and then a red pill was thrown into her mouth. This time she carefully tasted it before Chu Shui swallowed it. It was indeed delicious, but she still had to bargain. "Young master, I will just run. I won't learn your Dao Yin technique." Zhong Shou smiled, throwing the pill bottle to Yin Yang. After the latter received it, he didn't feel any pity, directly crushing the bottle and swallowing the remaining human pinnacle pill. This item was really precious and was a top-grade spiritual pill for the body wheel realm. Numerous cultivators dreamed of it. Carrying it on one's body would only invite trouble. Now that he had used it in front of so many people, it would instead cut off these people's thoughts. This human pinnacle pill wasn't of much use to him, but it could still save him 2 years of cultivation. On the other side, Zongling's eyes were red. "Zhong Shou, I think you are really crazy. A human pinnacle pill, even if eaten separately, is enough to create 4 to 5 Xiantian masters for our Sky Fox Zhong family. You let these 2 servants spoil it. I will definitely report today's matter to the elders of the Zhong family, and they will definitely give an explanation." Zhong Yuan's eyes were filled with rage as he stared over like he was spitting fire. The veins on his hands were popping out, as if he was extremely angry. Zhong Shou's lips curled up, thinking to himself, "If I don't use it now, am I going to wait for people to snatch it from me? If I obediently give this pill to you, Zhongling, and that purple lightning spear, you will be satisfied, right? Will you show mercy to me in the future?" Not willing to bother, Zhong Shou looked down at the black-shirt middle-aged man, smiling slightly. "That's right. Uncle Ian, I remember that just now someone said that I am a prodigal son, that my brain is really stupid and can't be saved. Uncle Ian, what do you think? Am I, Zhong Shou, a stupid person?" Yin Yang smiled when he heard that, his lips curling up as he bowed slightly towards Zhong Shou. "The prince isn't stupid, selling a black wave sword for 50 times the price. The person who said that the prince is stupid is the one who is really stupid." Zongling's face was ashen white. Just now, out of everyone in the restaurant, he was the one who scolded the most. Moreover, he scolded in front of Zhong Shou. All of a sudden, he was shocked, not knowing whether or not Zhong Shou was a blind cat bumping into a dead mouse. Or did he really know that the sword had other secrets, which was why he bid 10,000 beast crystals to buy it? In the hall below, the black-shirt middle-aged man's eyes were extremely dark and sunken. Before this, he thought that he was gleeful, but looking at him now, it made one want to laugh. He wasn't willing to stay for a moment longer, scoffing coldly before flicking his sleeves and leaving. Similarly, the old man in charge of the auction had an ugly expression. His breathing was uneven, and his face was ashen white. He was so regretful that he wanted to beat his chest and stomp his feet. When he sold this black wave sword, why didn't he think about carefully appraising it? He didn't even dare to touch those pearls and talismans, afraid that he would damage the spiritual sword. If he asked someone who knew his stuff to appraise it, he would be able to do it. 2 human pinnacle pills, a grade 5 spirit beast and 10,000 grade 3 beast crystals. How could the value be the same? This sword didn't need to be sold, as long as it was given to Lingyun's sect. It would be enough for the family to prosper for tens of years. That Zhu Renquang's face was filled with joy as he kept the broken blade sword. When he heard that, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. Prince Zhong Shou is truly an amazing person. Just now, the person who said that you were an idiot is really an idiot. You suddenly obtaining such a treasure will definitely attract people's greed. Although you don't have the human pinnacle pill, that grade 5 spirit beast will cause numerous spirit masters to want to snatch it and kill you. How about this? Within half a month, as long as you don't leave Cloud Saint City, I will protect you. I'll be able to keep you safe. There will be enough time for someone to deal with this item. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed. Listening to Zhu Renquang's tone, he most probably didn't know about the recent Pill Spirit Mountain matter. If not, he definitely wouldn't say such words. However, he still slightly nodded his head as a form of thanks for this person's kindness. It was impossible for him to be wild with joy. Zhu Renquang was a little surprised, but he didn't care. He looked around the tea-house before floating away, directly walking out of the tea-house. Zhong Shou didn't intend to stay any longer. He had already gotten the spiritual sword he wanted, along with 2 human pinnacle pills and a grade 5 spirit beast. Although he was a little interested in the grade 4 mutated cloud whale baby. However, compared to the grade 5 spirit beast in his hand, it wasn't much. At this moment, the gazes that were looking at him from all directions seemed to want nothing more than to tear him apart. No matter how thick his nerves were, he wasn't willing to continue staying here. After leaving the tea-house, when the 3 of them walked onto the streets, it was already deep into the night. Zhong Shou's smiling expression was filled with killing intent. Uncle Ian, what is going on with the Yunxia 7 swords? It refers to the 7 sword experts of Yunxia Mountain. They are all Xiantian masters, and it is said that 1 or 2 of them have already stepped into the martial ancestor realm. The one just now is called Ren Qianqiu, and he calls himself the Deceitful Sword. Although he is the head of the Yunxia 7 swords, he is just the oldest. However, in these 2 years, it is said that his sword path has greatly improved, and even some 4 Meridian Earth Chakra ancestors can't beat him. Although Yin Yang has broken through to Xiantian, he knows that he isn't his opponent. Even with that human pinnacle pill, it is far from enough. As he said that, Yin Yang couldn't help but advise, Prince, just now you were a little rash. Even if you knew that the sword was a little mysterious, you could have left first. Why did you take it out and put us in danger? Today we were lucky that Zhu Renquang shocked us, which was why we didn't get into trouble. If he wasn't here, Yin Yang really doesn't dare to imagine what would happen in the future. He had suppressed these words in his chest for a long time, and now that he said it out loud, he felt much better. Zhong Shou didn't agree or disagree, squinting his eyes as he looked forward. Yin Yang was also wary, following Zhong Shou's line of sight. Then, he was shocked. He saw that the black-shirt middle-aged man who had left ahead of them was walking over from the opposite side. His hand pressed on the sword, and his aura was shocking, causing the people on the streets to move aside. Only when he was 10 steps away from the 3 of them did he stop. Looking at Zhong Shou, after a long while, that black-shirt middle-aged man laughed coldly. I will remember what happened today. Within half a month, I will take your life. Chapter 104. This deceitful sword Ren Qianqiu seemed to be waiting for Zhong Shou to say those words. He only glanced at the three of them coldly before swaggering off. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed slightly before relaxing. He asked curiously, "Then who are the other 6 people?" Yin Yang looked at Zhong Shou's expression and knew that what he said just now was useless. After sighing slightly, he patiently replied, "Although there are 7 people in the Yunxia 7 swords, other than this deceitful sword Renqianqiu, there is only Dark Sword Lu Qing and Void Sword Hong Kong, who are the most famous. They are all grandmasters, each of them overseeing a region. There were also 2 other people, Mist Sword Xie Jun and Fury Sword Yun Tao, who were always inseparable from Renqianqiu. Their strengths are only a little weaker than Renqianqiu." Zhong Shou knew what Yin Yang meant. Since Renqianqiu was so confident, saying that he would take his life within half a month, then the people that came over from Yunxia Mountain weren't just deceitful sword. Since Mist Sword Xie Jun and Fury Sword Yun Tao often accompanied Renqianqiu, they were most likely already here. However, at this moment, what he cared about more was that dark sword. It made him think back to his last life, the sword intent that he studied the most and grasped the deepest. In the God Emperor game, he was called the Sword Emperor. But in reality, his name also had the word dark in it. Who knows whether or not this person walked the same path as him, and whether or not he could give him some surprises. As Yin Yang said those words, his eyes were filled with violence. This person is arrogant, but he only needs 3 months. Yin Yang was confident that he wasn't inferior to him. However, he isn't his opponent now. "Prince, since the situation within Gantian Mountain has changed, if you have no choice, who knows, you might have to ask that purple lightning spear Zhong Yuan and Zhongling for help." Zhong Shou smiled when he heard that, but he still didn't reply. Even if those 3 from Gantian Mountain changed their minds and wanted to escort him back to the mountain to take over the position of Monster King, he would still be able to do so. However, there was one thing that would never change. That was to cut off his winged men and remove Zhong Weiron's influence. It would be better if he could borrow the help of others. If he really couldn't do it, he could do it himself. Furthermore, there was a certain level of tacit understanding between the 3 of them. Therefore, from the very beginning, he did not intend to borrow the strength of those 3 people. At this time, he was not in the mood to hide his strength. In this situation where he was surrounded by wolves, he probably could not hide it. It was better to openly show it to others. Let those who were still loyal to him see hope. Since he couldn't kill anyone today to establish his authority, he could only think about it in the future. After all, this was Cloud Saint City, and he had to give the city lord some face. With the foundation left behind by his father, he actually didn't need to resort to any schemes to take back the throne of the Demon King and control the 4 provinces. He could just break through it with brute force. Although this path also placed him in a dangerous place and would definitely attract the crazy counterattack of those 3 people. Even powers like Yunxia Mountain and Blazing Flame Mountain would go all out and not worry about anything. However, what Zhong Shou was not afraid of was such a life and death battle. In his last life, he was the head of the 7 emperors, the most outstanding talent in the cloud world for hundreds of years. Why would he be afraid of such small dangers? Although his martial path merged the strengths of hundreds of schools of thought, taking the essence and merging it all into one. The more knowledge one had, the more one could reach the God realm of the martial path. However, it was okay to prove one's path through killing. The essence absorbed from the lightning phoenix egg needed a certain amount of external pressure to stimulate its potential and digest the Xiantian essence energy that had settled in his bones, muscles, and chakra meridians. Directly skipping over the matter of the Yunxia 7 swords, Zhong Shou started to think about his fiancée. Who knows whether or not the meridian spirit pill had been refined. His footsteps quickened, and when he returned to his courtyard, Zhong Shou was stunned. He saw that Xianyuan Iran and Li Yunyang were once again missing. However, beside the furnace, there were 3 pill bottles placed neatly as well as a note with the words, "The pill has been refined, don't consume it." Zhong Shou opened it and took a look. It was pure black, shaped like a dragon's eye, with a slight fishy smell. It looked similar to the Meridian Spirit pill that he had refined before. However, this time he didn't even need to test it out. Zhong Shou had a feeling. He knew that these pills were the true Meridian Spirit pills. A total of 134 pills. I only used a third of the herbs I collected. I also only used 5 kilograms of silver charcoal. This girl actually only opened the cauldron once. The cauldron no longer has any residual heat. She should have only used 4 hours. Even with Zhong Shou's vast knowledge, his eyes couldn't help but flash with shock. No wonder this girl was taken in as a disciple by that so-called old man Mingdan. No wonder that pill fountain sect would make her a direct disciple. This kind of alchemy talent was indeed extraordinary. At this moment, even he couldn't help but feel ashamed of himself for that Zhong Shou from before. The so-called daughter of the heavens was probably like this. Who knows where these 2 girls went? They asked for a room in my courtyard, but I don't see them at all. They are so mysterious and hard to understand. Zhong Shoxin was a little curious, but he was also eager to refine the Meridian Spirit pills in his hands. The moment Chu Shui and Yin Yang returned to the courtyard, they both went into secluded meditation to refine the medicinal power of the human pinnacle pill. Zhong Shou also closed his room door and directly swallowed a Meridian Spirit pill. A moment later, he felt that his limbs were soft and had no strength at all. Looking into his body, he saw that his chakra meridians were also slowly turning soft. Zhong Shou's eyes lit up. He knew that the Meridian Spirit pill that Xianyuan Iran refined was indeed effective. The moment the poison entered his body, it was neutralized. The medicinal effect also exceeded normal Meridian Spirit pills by 30%, enough to be listed as a high-grade spiritual pill. His body was weak, but Zhong Shou used his true qi to forcefully move his muscles and bones to stand up. First was the spiritual breathing fist, going from soft to hard. Next was the great blazing sun fist, going from hard to soft. When it came to the last move, the fist changed once more. The fist technique this time was both hard and soft. It was the little 5-round enlightened king fist that Zhong Shou learned in the last life. After training the foundation, breathing, and bone marrow, it was training the vital energy and the 5 organs. This little 5-round enlightened king fist trained the vital energy and the 5 organs. It was a foundation-building fist technique that came from the Buddhist faction. After Zhong Shou absorbed the lightning phoenix egg, he directly jumped over and advanced to the 7 Meridian Mythic Master realm. He reached the stage of training the 6 organs, skin, muscles, and muscles. However, the vital energy and 5 organs still couldn't be neglected. The little 5-round enlightened king fist still needed to be trained. However, at this moment, Zhong Shou was only training these 3 sets of fist techniques to stretch his body. When his body slowly warmed up, Zhong Shou's actions changed once more. It was so slow that it seemed a little strange. This was an external energy leading technique, but it was different from any of the energy leading techniques that Zhong Shou had created in the past. During these few months, Zhong Shou had been thinking hard day and night to come up with a set of postures, even to the point that he had totally given up on practicing spells and talismans. As a result, on the path of a spirit master, apart from his soul power being much stronger, everything else was a blank piece of paper. Cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. Zhong Shou gritted his teeth, blood seeping out from the corner of his lips. With these postures, he would stretch his meridians. Sometimes he would correct them, but most of the time he would twist them. In his last life, those people who used the Meridian Spirit Pill to correct their chakra meridians all had tools to help them. At this moment, not only did he not have any medicine to numb his limbs, but he could only rely on this energy-leading technique that he had deduced and tailored for himself. Sweat dripped down like rain. After 6 hours, his meridians once again became firm. Zhong Shou's entire body was drenched in water. The ground beneath his feet was also covered in large patches of water. He was totally devoid of energy as he laid paralyzed on the ground. He didn't have the strength to stand up. He could only gulp down large mouthfuls of the salt water that he had prepared. However, this time was different from before when he had used up all his energy. Lying on the ground for a full 10 hours, Zhong Shou slowly caught his breath. I nearly couldn't take it and wasted all my efforts. Hey! Who knows, I might have really invented a secret method of extorting confessions by torture this time, especially for torturing people. The Meridian Spirit Pill and this set of postures are a perfect match. Even those ascended ancestors would collapse. Zhong Shou violently shook his head and forced himself to stand up. However, he still felt that his body was extremely weak. Even his divine soul felt weak and powerless. If someone tried to kill him now, he wouldn't be able to fight back at all. Zhong Shou instinctively frowned. He made up his mind. Unless he confirmed his safety or had a reliable protector spirit beast by his side. If not, even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't use the Meridian Spirit Pill. However, when he looked into his body, Zhong Shou was slightly delighted. He could clearly feel that the 2 meridians in his body had been slightly corrected. Not only did they stretch out as he wished. At this moment, they weren't tangled together like a ball. Instead, they were separated from one another. Starting from his energy ocean, they were like a spiral structure that stretched out in all directions. The true qi within his chakra meridians also seemed to have some order. It circulated in the 2 meridians, attracting one another and repelling one another. Only in some areas they were still tangled together. This was because his energy-leading technique hadn't been perfected, and there were some areas that he couldn't train in. In the future, it still needed to be improved. Moreover, the modification of his meridians was only at the beginning. It is similar to what I expected. As expected, the energy conflicts are much less. However, I don't know how my spiral meridians are like when I use strength. Zhong Shou tested, slightly using the true qi in his body as he smacked the chair beside him. In the next moment, he saw this extremely sturdy ironwood chair shatter into pieces. Those fine wooden shrapnel were swept up by a whirlpool like power and scattered in all directions. Zhong Shou was totally startled. Originally, he only wanted to smash this ironwood chair into pieces and he would be satisfied. He didn't expect that it would end in such a situation. This spiral meridian structure was something he had no choice but to do. However, looking at it now, it seemed like it had a lot of potential. Chapter 105. Sister Yunyang, I know you don't like him. However, no matter how bad he is still my future husband. Li Yunyang's chest instantly felt stuffy and she couldn't breathe. Little miss, you really treat him as your fiancé? You want to waste your entire life for him? There are many talents in the cloud world. Even the most basic disciple of Pill Fountain sect is much stronger than him. The mysterious moonwood brilliance technique that little miss cultivates needs to balance yin and yang. If you marry this piece of trash, don't you want to cultivate this technique? You love to refine pills, but if your cultivation stops, how will you refine the pills you want? Xianyuan Iren was startled, following which she shook her head firmly. Yunyang, I know you are doing this for my own good. However, in this world, everyone's personality is different. Maybe other girls wouldn't hesitate to give up on this marriage for me. However, I, Xianyuan Iren, only place a lot of emphasis on loyalty and loyalty. I like those talents too. In the past, I've also dreamed of someone wearing golden armor and riding on 7-colored auspicious clouds to marry me. I also wanted to refine all the pills recorded in the sect to see what the peak of the world was like. However, if I read it backwards, it is loyalty and loyalty. I remember that Father told me when I was young to not go against the path of loyalty and loyalty. I have always remembered it in my heart and didn't dare to forget. Li Yunyang not only had a headache, but her face was also cramping up. She thought to herself, "Old master, when you taught me all this, did you think that a few years later, such a situation would occur? Would you regret what you said for the rest of your life? Little miss, you have to value loyalty and loyalty. However, you don't owe that Zong Shou anything, so why do you have to sacrifice your entire life?" "How do I not owe him anything? My father was able to rise up in Donglin Cloud Continent because of Uncle Weiron's help a few years ago. If it wasn't for my father having such a position, how would I be able to enter Pill Fountain sect so early? Even if you don't owe him anything, breaking off the engagement when he's in danger is like hitting a man when he's down." When Xianyuan Iren said this, her brows furrowed. "Father taught me to be benevolent and righteous, but he forgot. He forgot the kindness of Uncle Weiran for 15 years. Speaking of which, our Xian Mountain City came because of Uncle Zong Weiran. Is it so important in his eyes? So important that he turned a blind eye to the danger of his beloved son?" Li Yunyang tasted bitterness in her mouth, and felt weak all over. Xian Mountain City's millions of people, the life and death of a race, compared to the life and death of his good friend's son, which was more important, it was easy to understand. If he sacrificed the future of the millions of people in Xian Mountain City for this so-called brotherhood, it didn't fit the path of benevolence and righteousness. To be able to protect oneself, to know when to give up, and to adapt to the situation, was a truly good city lord. Actually, I also know Father's difficulties, and I don't intend to force him. However, the promise that her father had previously forgotten, she would remember it by her daughter. "I, Xianyuan Iren, will take care of my fiancé." Xianyuan Iren's tone changed, her expression becoming serious. "He does have a dual meridian body, but the meridian spirit pill that I refined today has some hope of curing him. I am good at pill refining, and one day I will be able to find a way to make him cultivate." "Then is it 10 years or 20 years? Li Yunyang laughed coldly. "Even if one day you succeed, I think that Zong Shou will most likely hate you. Those guys are the most heartless, hiding under the wings of a girl. Not only will he not be grateful, but he might even feel ashamed and see you as an enemy. Even if he doesn't feel that way, how can he stop the mouths of others? No matter how good his personality is, if people talk about him too much, he will have a knot in his heart." Xianyuan Iren blinked her eyes in confusion, and then her eyes shone brightly as she looked at Li Yunyang. "Sister Yunyang, before you treat others well, you have to consider what they will think and how they will repay you? I don't care what others think of me or how they treat me. Iren just needs to treat him well, and I won't let him down in this life." Li Yunyang instantly felt totally helpless. Looking at the young girl's expression, for some reason, she felt ashamed of her own inferiority. Knowing that it was useless to try to persuade her now, she sighed. "Forget it. If little miss wants to be like this, then I have no choice. I swore in the past that I would follow little miss for the rest of my life. This time I will go crazy with you. I only hope that little miss won't regret what happened today. I chose this path myself, so why would I regret it? Actually, he isn't as bad as Sister Yunyang said. After being scolded by me today, he was still able to bear with it and ask for advice. It can be seen that he is calm and humble, smart and eager to learn." Xianyuan Iren formed a seal with her hands, and the 9 red wooden pagodas rose into the air. They turned into the size of a finger and flew into her hand. Following which she thought back to how Zong Shou didn't come to the room to take a look after she started to refine pills. Helplessness flashed across her eyes. He was calm and humble, but he wasn't eager to learn. However, in her heart, she couldn't help but feel curious. Sister Yunyang, you said that Zhong Shou wasn't willing to follow you in. Then where did he go this afternoon? A dark and sinister expression flashed across Li Yunyang's eyes. It disappeared in an instant. I don't know the details. I only heard that the prince went to a tea house in the city and used 10,000 grade 3 beast crystals to buy a grade 1 spiritual sword. I don't know what happened after that. However, I heard that Zhong Shi's brother Zhongling was there and was furious. 10,000 grade 3 beast crystals? Just to buy a grade 1 spiritual sword? Xianyuan Iran's hand trembled slightly as she sucked in a cold breath. The 9 spiritual flames that were being retracted nearly went out of control and exploded. After consuming the Meridian Spirit Pill and sacrificing blood to the sword, Zhong Shou used a full 2 days to slowly recover his energy. This was also because he had the essence of the lightning phoenix egg on his body, which was why he was able to recover so quickly. If it was other people, they wouldn't be able to get out of bed without 10 days to half a month. For 2 consecutive days, Zhong Shou either drew talismans or reconstructed talismans in his room. The former was to refresh his talisman techniques and draw some talismans as backup. The latter wasn't for refining pills but for other purposes. As for the pill furnace, after the Meridian Spirit Pill was refined, he casually tossed it into the trash. His days were really leisurely, no one came to disturb him. All the nearby dangers were temporarily blocked out, causing Zhong Shou to have the illusion that he had returned to his last life, those peaceful and quiet times. Sometimes he would feel emotional that if he could continue to live in this courtyard, it would be great. However, this was just a fantasy. If he really had such thoughts, then he wouldn't be far from death. Apart from drawing the talisman formations, he also gave some pointers to Shui. This was simple, directly sending this brat to catch birds. Next was to nurture the sword. Every day in Zhong Shou's room, balls of black sword light danced about. Not only could it strengthen the spirituality of the sword, but it could also increase his control over the black wave sword. He could also use this to familiarize himself with how spirit masters controlled artifact. On the sword body, there were blood marks left by him. Even 10,000 feet away, he could control it as he wished. In just a few hours, Zhong Shou could control it as he wished. He could even split some of his attention to craft talismans. However, after 2 consecutive days of training, Zhong Shou still wasn't satisfied. This sword driving in the air is indiscernible and unpredictable, swift and changeable, able to kill people 1,000 miles away. However, its strength is a little weak. I can't add martial intent onto it and can only rely on the talisman techniques of the spiritual sword itself to injure people. I can bully those low-grade martial masters, but if I face Cyantians, I can only be a bystander. No wonder spirit masters above the out-of-body realm like shields, hammers, whips, and ropes. Either their attacks are shocking or they have other uses. Following which, he thought back to those spirit masters who focused on sword driving. Zhong Shoxin was filled with envy. Those sword cultivators use their own sword as their second soul. That sword is like their own body, able to activate sword intent. Unfortunately, I don't have a way to learn this second soul technique. If not, I can find a top sword embryo and grow it to be able to roar in the cloud world. However, with his current situation, it was naturally impossible for him to find a good sword embryo. As a second soul, this black wave sword was just asking to die. To use this black wave sword to add martial intent to go up against those martial masters. Unless his soul went out of his body and used his soul to wield the sword. With the sword techniques he had in his last life, he only needed one sword in his hand. Below martial ancestor, he was confident that he would be invincible. However, with that, the requirements for the protector spirit beasts were really high. The rising moon lion is good at hiding and running swiftly, killing in one strike. If I protect it by my side, it would be burying its talent. Although little gold is good, it hasn't grown. If I want to use my soul to drive the sword, I need to find another protector spirit beast. I have no choice. After the energy in his body recovered, Zhong Shou continued to rest for a day. On the third day, he finally felt refreshed. The talisman formation he needed was finally drawn. Pretty much instantly, he placed out an incense table and lit up 2 white candles to make a simple spell altar. He also pasted several yellow talismans onto the table. Zhong Shou's face turned serious as he stood in the middle of the formation. He took out the silver beast crystal that he had exchanged from Zhu Renquang not long ago. The bear spirit beast within was a grade 5 protector spirit beast. However, in truth, it was above grade 6, far from what an out-of-body realm spirit master could suppress. The reason why he had such confidence today was because in his last life, Zhong Shou had seen a talisman formation in the library. It could temporarily seal a portion of the spirit beast's strength and force it down a grade. However, the process of subduing it was still dangerous. If it was before he got the Black Wave Sword, Zhong Shou definitely wouldn't take the risk. However, at this moment, he didn't hesitate to toss the beast crystal in front of the talisman. While it was still in midair, 2 talismans were lit up by the candles and chased after it. A ball of fire instantly wrapped up the beast crystal. In the next moment, green smoke seeped out. After it formed, it was a 60-foot giant bear that appeared in front of Zhong Shou. Luckily, his room was wide enough, made of giant wood, 80 feet tall, which was why the roof didn't burst open. Chapter 106. A ball of fire instantly wrapped up the beast crystal. In the next moment, green smoke seeped out. When it formed, it was a 60-foot tall giant bear that appeared in front of Zhong Shou. Luckily, his room was wide enough, made of giant wood. The beams were 80 feet tall, which was why the roof didn't burst open. Its body was silver, and its eyes were blood red. After looking at Zhong Shou, it roared out. Zhong Shou pounced forward. Who knows if it was an illusion, but although it was a soul body, every step it took seemed to cause the ground to shake. Back off! Zhong Shou was unfazed, throwing out the 2 talismans in his hand. They turned into 2 balls of green and blue flames, striking towards the 2 arms of the bear. That giant silver bear also seemed to have been electrocuted. It immediately leaned back and retracted its hands. Zhong Shou used his hands to form a seal and chanted. Just as the giant silver bear was about to pounce once more, he hollered coldly. Talisman chain 1000 coil, bind it. 10 silver talisman chains instantly rose up from the formation, directly wrapping around the body of the giant bear. However, the giant bear's body continued to struggle, trying to stand up like a human. The huge strength actually caused the chains to break one by one. Zhong Shou didn't panic, taking out another talisman, directly activating it, turning into a yellow light that charged into the sky. Stone Gathering Talisman, suppress. In an instant, traces of Earth-type spiritual energy gathered from all directions. Slowly, a giant stone was drawn, pressing down on the body of the giant bear. The giant stone grew bigger and bigger. At the start, the silver bear was still able to resist, but slowly, it couldn't take it anymore. It was pulled by the talisman chains, its entire body crawling on the ground. The red glow in its eyes became even thicker. Suddenly, a light flashed, and a red mark appeared in the middle of its forehead. A ball of silver light was spat out from within, striking towards the altar that was inches away. Zhong Shou's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. With a thought, the Black Wave Sword flew over. Only to hear a light king sound as the hiltless spiritual sword was actually shaken and flew back. After the silver light shuddered, it continued onward without any signs of slowing down. However, just as he reached the incense burner table, he was stopped by an invisible wave and was suspended in midair. A yellow paper talisman was pasted on the incense table. It was burning without any fire. The silvery light finally revealed itself. It was actually a small silver awl with a cold glint flickering on its tip. This mountain-breaking bear has indeed mutated. I've already used this spiritual formation to prevent it from coming into contact with the earth veins below, so it won't be able to use the earth chi. Then, he used the talisman chains to trap him and the stone talisman to suppress him. Yet, he still had the strength to fight back. Zhu Renquang said that this item and the 2 human pinnacle pills were worth the same as the broken blade sword. He is a little humble. Zhong Shou didn't dare to be careless. Looking at the giant bear that was inches away from him, he roared again and bared his fangs. That small silver owl's momentum became stronger and stronger, causing ripples in front of his body. He quickly formed a sword seal and waved it. It caused the black wave sword to charge down once more, forcefully stabbing into the blood mark at the center of the silver bear's forehead. In the next instance there was a furious roar. The entire room seemed to be shaking. The silver bear was still unwilling to be controlled, like only now did it realize that it was a soul body. Its entire body turned into a ball of green smoke and rose up, trying to scatter in all directions to break away from the chains and the giant stone above its head. When Zhong Shou saw the situation, he laughed instead, his eyes filled with cold disdain. Bastard! Since I want to subdue you, how can I not be prepared for this? You are strong, but you are too stupid. However, that's good, it suits me. He stepped on the ground, and another talisman burned on the incense table. A ball of lightning was formed in the air. Who knows if it was because of the lightning phoenix mark in Zhong Shou's soul. The silver lightning had a slight purple intent. Following the talisman chains, it spread all around. It caused the ball of green smoke within the formation to toss and turn. A moment later, it formed up once more. Not only was it much weaker, but its body also seemed to have shrunk. Like a trapped beast that was struggling to escape, it looked towards the spell altar with a hateful gaze. Zhong Shou didn't care, jumping up and arriving in front of the silver bear. He wasn't afraid of the beast's counterattack, pointing at the center of the silver bear's brows, below the wave-breaking sword. Among the protector beasts beside him, be it Little Gold or the rising moon lion, they all had physical bodies. This was the first time he had subdued a spirit beast. Luckily, he had seen many in his last life. Not only in real life, but he had witnessed it tens of times. In the God Emperor game, he had even personally tried it. He used the lightning tooth sword to slice open his wrist. Fresh red blood instantly spurted out. However, this was only one of the materials. Zhong Shou took out a small bottle and opened it. Numerous jade green and extremely cold liquid flowed out. The latter was directly refined from numerous beast spirit stones. Using the essence and some special herbs to refine it into a spirit liquid. Naturally, Zhong Shou didn't have the time to refine it. However, this thing was really common and could be bought in any city. What Zhong Shou was using now was grade 4 spirit liquid, the highest grade that could be bought in Cloud Saint City. When it mixed with Zhong Shou's blood, the color became even weirder, green with a tinge of red. However, it was restricted by a certain power as it seeped into the silver bear's brows. In just a moment, a small talisman formation was drawn, similar to when he subdued Little Gold. Only the last few strokes weren't completed. Beads of sweat seeped out from Zhong Shou's face. He felt that the intent of the spirit beast was extremely violent, like a wave crashing onto the shore. It resisted with all its might, wanting to totally shatter this soul-controlling talisman. Laughing coldly, Zhong Shou's empty left hand grabbed a grade 4 spirit stone from his sleeves. Energy swallowing. That crystal instantly exploded, turning into a ball of dust in Zhong Shou's hand. The right-hand fingertip that was on the silver bear's brows suddenly shone with a blood-colored glow. Along with the last talisman being drawn, the red color in the eyes of the mountain-breaking silver bear instantly dimmed. Even its expression seemed to have become much more tamed. If it was a normal spirit beast, he would have subdued it and made it his protector spirit beast. From then on, it would live and die with the spirit master. However, Zhong Shou could still feel that the giant bear in front of him still had the intent to resist. The violent hatred still didn't disappear. After the blood-colored talisman was drawn, it continued to expand and spread all over its body. It caused the entire body of the mountain-breaking silver bear to be dyed in a layer of red. A full 8 hours later, Zhong Shou panted as he found a chair nearby to sit down. Subduing this protector spirit beast was really dangerous. Other things weren't much. Under such a well-prepared situation, he didn't need to worry about what this grade 5 spirit beast could do to him. It was rare for him to be so focused for a few hours. A moment of distraction would cause the talisman formation that was being drawn to collapse. The amount of mental energy he consumed was even several times more than 3 days ago. That day was painful, but it wasn't as painful as today. He was exhausted, his soul was dry, and he was like a lamp that was about to run out of oil. However, at this moment, the giant bear in front of him that was originally 60 feet tall had shrunk to 20 feet tall. Even if it stood up, it wouldn't touch the roof. Although it didn't have the aura from before, its expression became peaceful and it didn't resist Zhong Shou's orders anymore. However, the amount of soul power this beast needed from him was also huge. Even if he forcefully suppressed it to grade 4, it was still the same as the rising moon lion and little gold combined. Along with the physical presence of the latter two, which he couldn't break his connection with, these 3 protector spirit beasts were already close to their limit. Even with the energy swallowing technique, swallowing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to replenish their consumption, they still couldn't take it. This mountain-breaking bear was born with a silver eye. Although it can't truly open it, it can already pierce through gold and break stone. In the future, I can just call it Little Monster. Casually giving this silver bear a name, Zhong Shou recalled that the rising moon lion that was following his orders to hide outside of the city didn't have a name yet. Although there weren't many rising moon lions, there were still some in the world. It wasn't good to name his protector spirit beast. After grade 6, beasts would have their own unique true names and their lives would be at stake. The name Rising Moon Lion wasn't suitable. That Rising Moon Lion's comprehension is not bad and it has some intelligence. In the future, its achievements won't just stop at this. It can be called Little Intelligence. He didn't realize that his naming style was no different from those kids. On the contrary, Zhong Shou was delighted and felt that it was really appropriate. Coincidentally, when he gave it a name, he felt that his soul and intent had crossed 20 miles and was connected to the rising moon lion outside of the city. This was the spiritual connection between a spirit master and himself. Originally, with his current out-of-body realm, he could at most reach 10 miles. Only if one of them had a particularly strong will and cooperated with the other would they be able to overcome this restriction. Oh? I found a treasure outside of the city that is similar to the 7 spirit ring. There are also 2 women that seem really fierce. Little Intelligence, you aren't their match. Do you want me to head out of the city to take a look? Zhong Shou closed his eyes for a moment before smiling. A beast that just entered grade 4 and hasn't even seen many spiritual artifacts, how would it know what a treasure is? There are many experts in the world and Cloud Saint City is where a martial saint was born. Every year, numerous martial artists come here to pay their respects. It is normal to meet 2 slightly stronger women outside of the city. In his heart, he was slightly curious. Just the fact that it was similar to the 7 spirit ring was worth him going over to take a look. Unfortunately, at this moment, he was already exhausted and found it difficult to even stand up. He was totally unable to leave the city. Speaking of women, Zhong Shou thought about Xianyuan Iran and Li Yunyang. Who knows why, but since the 2 of them left 3 days ago, there were no signs of them. Did they suddenly regret and go back? If that was the case, then it would be for the best. His head was really heavy and he couldn't think about anything. Zhong Shou waved his hand and ordered the demon silver bear to turn into a ball of smoke and enter his sleeve. Then, he lost his consciousness and fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 107. Who knows how long had passed before Zhong Shou woke up in a daze. Immediately, he felt a pain in his right wrist. Raising it in front of his face, it was healing and stopping the bleeding. However, the reddish-brown mark was still shocking. Zhong Shou sighed. He was used to bleeding now. If it wasn't for his marrow training and his vital energy being strong, he would have a blood deficiency sooner or later. The talisman ink used by spirit masters was best with their own blood and was the most effective. However, it wasn't like there weren't any other things that could replace it. There were even tens of things that were more effective than it. Unfortunately, he didn't have any of them by his side. Looking out of the window, he didn't need to look to know that it was noon of the second day. A moment later, Zhong Shou was startled. This spiritual energy movement is a little weird. There seems to be someone cultivating or using a spiritual formation nearby. This place seems to be just next door? Zhong Shou's brows furrowed. The only one who stayed beside his room was Xianyuan Iren. A few days ago, she forcefully moved in, not caring whether he agreed or not. She just placed all her luggage in. However, recently she wasn't here for a few days, so he nearly forgot about this matter. Who knows what cultivation method this girl is cultivating? Is it the Fire Moon Dark Art or the Enin Fire Essence technique? It's so weird. Oh right, I heard that the Pill Fountain sect passed down a secret technique, the Mysterious Moon Wood Brilliance technique. It was said that if one cultivated both spirit and martial arts, using this technique to refine pills, one would have a 70% success rate. However, wasn't this cultivation method proven to have flaws and no one cultivated it anymore? Zhong Shou shook his head and directly walked out of the door. However, just as he was about to step out of the door, the corner of his eyes saw a hole in the wall. It was the hole that he had made a few days ago with the lightning-tooth sword. Although he ordered the servants in the courtyard to clean it up, the hole in the wall hadn't been fixed. Struggling in his heart, Zhong Shou hesitated for a moment. In the end, he couldn't suppress the curiosity in his heart and quietly walked in front of the hole. He thought to himself, "Miss Iren, please don't blame me. It's not that I, Zhong Shou, want to peek at your cultivation. I'm just worried." Although the power of the Mystic Moon Wood Brilliance technique was incomparably tyrannical, there was a huge flaw in the later stages. More than 10 of the most talented disciples of the Pill Fountain sect had all fallen to it. He had already died before reaching the immortal martial realm. This directly led to the decline of the Elixir Fountain sect in the future. From 7th place to 14th place out of the 19 spiritual palaces. It was okay if he didn't see it, but if this Xianyuan Iren broke off the engagement with him, he wouldn't bother about it. But now that the other party had come looking for him, he couldn't just sit back and watch. Although this woman's brain was flooded with water, saying that she would insist on some benevolence and righteousness and refuse to annul the engagement, it gave him a headache. However, in his heart, he was still happy for Xianyuan Iren. Not to mention this incomparably bloody era, there were not many people who were so righteous even in the flourishing age of etiquette and music established by the Divine Emperor. As a woman, it was even rarer. He drew his eyes close to the hole and saw a ball of spiritual light flickering, only to see that near the wooden bed, a red and green pill was hanging in the air. It was this item that was swallowing large amounts of spiritual energy and was also the source of all the spiritual energy fluctuations in this area. So it is an external pill. I was wondering how this girl broke through to the Xiantian realm at 16. She also reached the 3rd meridian of the Earth Chakra realm, even stronger than that Zhao Yinran. How can there be so many talents in this world? Zhong Shou shook his head. However, he could see that this Xianyuan Iran's talent was not bad and was only half a step away from the true Xiantian realm. The last few times he looked at this girl, he only felt that her yang energy was surging and her foundations were extremely firm. She didn't need much time and didn't need to borrow the help of the external pill. This pill could also become one of the spiritual artifacts that she carried with her. However, when he looked closely at this half-red half-green pill, the breathing patterns as well as the spiritual patterns that occasionally flashed on it, Zhong Shou couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It really is the mysterious moon wood brilliance technique. Is this girl one of the fallen geniuses of the pill fountain sect? She has obviously entered the basics of this technique and can be considered a small achievement. This is going to be problematic. Sighing, Zhong Shou looked at the ground and at the person sitting there. Then, his entire body froze up like a statue. It was a young girl of about 16 years old sitting cross-legged on the bed. Her body had already grown up, her skin was white as snow, smoother and more beautiful than the most exquisite porcelain. Her breasts were round and perky, her waist was thin like a willow. Below, one could see the deep ravine. Her body was much better than what he had seen before. Zhong Shou only felt his mouth dry up, the blood in his stomach boiling. He thought to himself why this Xianyuan Iran didn't wear clothes when she cultivated. Then, he thought back to the mysterious moon wood brilliance technique. When she cultivated, the fire around her body would be extremely strong and there was nothing that it couldn't burn. All of his clothes would be burned away. Then, Xianyuan Iran seemed to have sensed something, opening her eyes and looking over. She was startled at first, but then she realized that it was Zhong Shou who was peeping. Her beautiful eyes were filled with embarrassment and rage, her face flushed red, but she couldn't say anything. Her eyes dodged, not daring to look over. Zhong Shoxin groaned in his heart. After keeping silent for a moment, he took a few steps back. Then, he didn't even turn his head as he ran out of the door in a haggard manner. Only when he reached the courtyard at the side did he calm down. Then, he felt a heart-piercing pain. I Tanxiu have a good reputation. Who knew that it would be ruined today? Who knows what Xianyuan Iran's reaction would be? The key was that the hole in the wall was too coincidental. If it was any girl, they would think that he purposely opened it to peep at her. Did he have to explain to her that he was worried that she would be in danger when cultivating the mysterious moon wood brilliance technique, which was why he took a look? Not to mention whether or not she believed him, but just how did he know about the flaws of the mysterious moon wood brilliance technique? Actually, if Xianyuan Iran grabbed him and beat him up, then it was okay. What he was afraid of was that this woman, since she placed so much emphasis on loyalty, her personality would be really conservative. How weird, in my last life I had many experiences with girls. Why did I have to feel so guilty towards this girl who hasn't grown up? I only took a look at her body and didn't do anything. However, if I break off the engagement, who knows who will be lucky enough to marry her in the future? Such a good girl, 1 in 10,000. Thinking about that, for some reason, Zhong Shou felt uncomfortable in his chest, but he suppressed it. I have to think of a way to explain this matter to Xianyuan Iran. Should I apologize in person? However, wouldn't it be better if I could act like nothing happened? Thinking about it for a moment, he had no idea. Zhong Shou decided to train his sword in the front courtyard, one hand holding the lightning tooth sword, still using those basic sword techniques, only there were many more movements. His strength greatly increased, his body was more flexible, and his speed was faster. Naturally, his sword technique also changed. And the biggest difference was that there was an additional black wave sword beside him at this moment. Along with his nimble body, it continued to spin around for him. To be able to use his mind to drive the sword was one thing. However, it was another matter to perfectly match his own swordsmanship with the spirit sword thought method. The reason why people who cultivated in both spirit and martial arts could be stronger than people of the same grade was because of the combination of martial arts and spiritual techniques. Pretty much every sword that stabbed out, the sword body would shine with a dim lightning glow. It brought with it mist and mirage energy, like it had turned into a few swords, drifting about unpredictably. This wasn't a spiritual technique, and it wasn't completely caused by the spiritual technique. When a martial artist cultivated to the mythic master realm, their true chi would be strong and they would have their own specialties. He could already use some unique secret arts to trigger some changes in his spirit energy. For example, Yin Yang could control fire, and when Zhao Yanran exploded, her true chi could freeze 1,000 feet of land. Up until now, he had only been cultivating the most basic chi refinement technique. However, due to his body having both the Sky Fox and Lightning Phoenix marks, he was born with the ability to use lightning and illusionary technique. He didn't even need to control them himself. I do need to choose a chi cultivation method to cultivate. Not only do I need to prepare for Xiantian. When I use my strength, it is just too hard to control. Before this, Zhong Shou had a dual meridian body. Even if he had a martial arts treasury in his head, he could only temporarily delay it. However, at this moment, pretty much every sword that he stabbed out would cause some damage to the lightning tooth sword. The control of the spiral energy was far more difficult than he had expected. It far exceeded the control of basic chi cultivation method. The only path he could take now was to create his own. If he only had the spiral meridians in his body, then he didn't need to worry. The problem was that his lightning controlling ability and Sky Fox illusionary technique had to be considered. There was also the mysterious human race bloodline that hadn't awakened yet. He also needed to leave some room for change. This would test his martial arts foundations. Even the cultivation methods before Xiantian couldn't be formed in a short time. 3 days of not moving his muscles and bones. At this moment, his body was slowly heating up. Vital energy was circulating and flowing through his limbs and bones. Zhong Shou slowly cleared his mind of all distracting thoughts. Although the lightning tooth sword was crying out continuously, he still felt carefree. Slowly, he didn't restrict himself to those basic sword techniques. He also unknowingly used some of the exquisite sword techniques that he trained in his last life. It caused sword energy to sweep across this flat land, and blade shadows filled the air. Numerous leaves were sliced down. Those broken branches were sliced into pieces before they even landed on the ground. When the last sword stabbed out, Zhong Shou's body suddenly stood up straight. It was like he didn't exist in this world. The sword in his hand seemed to have stabbed out from the void, bringing with it a deep sense of death. It was as if there was an extremely cold and gloomy river flowing around him. Zhong Shou's gaze was totally emotionless, following which he came back to his senses. In front of him, 100 feet away, a pine tree had already withered. The fallen leaves beneath his feet also instantly turned yellow and withered. Just as he was laughing bitterly, Zhong Shou suddenly felt something and looked to his right, only to see Yin Yang take in a cold breath. His face was startled as he muttered, "Sword energy, sword intent, using the spirit to drive the sword. Did I see it wrongly? Am I, Yin Yang, still in a dream?" Chapter 108. So it is Uncle Yin. Zhong Shou heaved a sigh of relief, waving his sleeves and causing several talismans to fly out. They instantly turned into a ball of flame and spread all about. In just a moment, all the dead leaves on the ground were burned up. There was also a portion that hit the pine tree. Tongues of fire danced and burned fiercely. This action wasn't to cover his tracks, but to chase away the death energy that was attracted by his martial path intent. If he didn't use the flames of the sun to burn it out, within 3 days, all the plants and living beings within 1,000 feet would die. His Styx River Death sword had great battle records in his last life, causing the disciples of the various sects of the Cloud World to avoid it. In the end, as he knew that he had killed too many people, when he used the sword there was no life, so he sealed it and forgot about it. He chose another sword path that merged hundreds of schools, which was even more difficult. Just now, he unknowingly used it. Such a sword technique used the death energy of heaven and earth to turn into the Styx River Death sword. It harvested life, pretty much unsolvable, like the god of death, close to the evil path. If it was possible, Zhong Shou would rather not use this sword technique than not let others know about it. Luckily, the person watching from the side was Yin Yang. He wasn't afraid that others would learn it, but this sword technique was dangerous even if one just watched from the side. Only Yin Yang, who had trained hard for tens of years under the restrictions, was strong enough to not be affected by his sword intent. After dealing with the dead trees and leaves, Yin Yang finally came back to his senses, his eyes fixed on Zhong Shou. Using your mind to control the sword, has the prince really reached the out-of-body realm? Sword energy seeping out, pretty much comparable to Xiantian. Also, this sword technique, today I finally understand why Zhao Yanran wanted to see if the sun knew the sword intent. As expected, your sword path is one with the spirit. Uncle Yin, I have only opened up 7 meridians and am far from the sword intent level. It is still just sword rhythm. At most, it is slightly better than normal people. Seeing that Yin Yang's expression didn't change, Zhong Shou smiled helplessly, too lazy to explain. As for this out-of-body realm, I have indeed proven it. Did Chu Xue not mention it to you these few days? She did mention it. She also mentioned that you once used your soul to kill a Xiantian. Only Yin Yang didn't dare to believe it. Yin Yang nodded his head, a weird expression flashing across his eyes. Even when I personally saw it today, I still thought that I was dreaming. The Crown Prince's swordsmanship was something he had never seen or heard of before. Just now, Yin Yang even had a feeling that he was about to die. Therefore, he knew that if he were to face the tip of this sword, he would definitely die. What a pity, if the ruler was still here, who knows how happy he would be. Seeing that Yin Yang of Yin Yang's, Zhong Shou, he thought to himself that if his father was still here, would he treat him as a demon that took over his son's body and kill him? Whether or not he would be happy, that was even more uncertain. His eyes swept around, following which he looked around. Apart from the leaves and pine trees that he used talismans to burn, there were many fire marks. His heart couldn't help but move. Uncle Yin is comprehending Blade's strength? When Yin Yang heard that, he didn't immerse himself in reminiscing, his brow furrowing. That's right. He suddenly pulled out his blade and slashed at the air. Within 300 feet, the flames were extremely strong and spread out. Zhong Shou only felt that the area around him suddenly became hot, but he didn't react at all as he looked at the blade image that Yin Yang slashed out. Invading like fire, it was indeed filled with charm. My body has a fire nature, and I cultivate an ancient secret technique, the heaven-burning extreme flame blade. Which is why my martial path intent is like a flame charging. After 3 months, the prince demonstrated the great blazing sun fist and taught me the mysteries of the martial path. A few days ago, I reached the peak of my blade rhythm. However, as he said that, Yin Yang waved his blade once more. That sweeping flame once again swept outwards. However, this time the strength of the flame decreased. That snow-bright blade image also didn't have the intimidating aura from before. Yin Yang laughed bitterly. I was prepared to work harder to comprehend the strength of this blade technique, but I was unable to comprehend it and had no idea. In the past, Master said that my talent was shocking and that in the future, I would be the top of the blade path. The ruler also said that in the future, Yin Yang would enter the ascended realm. However, looking at it today, I, Yin Yang, am just a normal person. Zhong Shou sucked in a cold breath when he heard that. How long had it been since Yin Yang entered the 8 Meridian Martial Master realm? At this stage, he had just reached the threshold of comprehending the martial path intent. No wonder when he was in the tea house, he said that as long as he had a period of time, he wouldn't need to fear Ren Qianqiu. He did have the confidence. No wonder Zhong Weiran didn't hand his son over to those Xiantian experts or other trusted people. Instead, he handed him to Yin Yang. Not only because of his spirit race body, but also because of his unparalleled martial path talent. After staying in Pill Spirit Mountain for 5 to 6 years, once Yin Yang was able to use his own strength to break through his restrictions, he would be able to soar into the heavens. At that time, even if he hadn't finished cultivating, with just Yin Yang's strength, he would be able to protect him. Before this, he knew that Yin Yang's improvement would be extremely quick, even surpassing him. However, he didn't expect it to be so quick. Sizing up Yin Yang with a weird expression, Zhong Shou took in a deep breath before casually waving the lightning tooth sword to the side. People say that clouds are unpredictable. Actually, flames are similar, able to gather and disperse. If it is scattered, it can sweep 1,000 miles. If it is gathered, it can smelt gold and iron. Uncle Yin, you have already comprehended it, so I won't repeat it. I will only point out where you are lacking. Also, although the strength of the martial path is within the range of the martial path intent, it is different from the rhythm, intent, soul, and spirit. That sword shadow circled around, the flames all around swept over and gathered at the tip of Zhong Shou's sword. Then, like a flame tongue jumping, it suddenly crossed 100 feet of space, until it was right in front of Yin Yang's eyes. When Yin Yang came to his senses, the tip of the lightning-toothed sword was just an inch away from his brow. The tip of the sword shone with a white light, extremely hot. What was more shocking was that the current Zhong Shou seemed to have merged into the flames. Along with the flames that covered the sky, it spread over and wanted to burn him to ashes. An understanding rose up in his heart. This was the strength of the fire sword. Zhong Shou actually used the sword rhythm level to reach the effect of strength. Uncle Yin, do you understand now? You are only using the knife to control the fire and can't borrow the strength of the fire. Actually, everything in the world can enter strength. Every blade of grass, every tree, the weather changes, even one's identity and power can be displayed in strength. People who train it to the peak can even go up against experts who are connected to the gods in the martial path. Yin Yang was originally thinking about it carefully. However, when he heard the last sentence, he didn't believe it. Connected to the gods in the martial path, those were all experts above the celestial martial realm. How could this strength go up against them? Zhong Shou smiled and didn't explain anymore. At this moment, he couldn't say that in the future, he had heard of an emperor who controlled 36 small worlds. He used the billions of living beings in his country and tens of millions of troops to enter strength. He killed a spiritual grandmaster who was at the entrance of the celestial martial realm with one sword. At that time, the cloud world was already connected to many other worlds, which was why they knew about the secrets of other worlds. It wasn't as closed off as it was now. Yin Yang was still in deep thought with his eyes closed. Who knows how long passed before he sighed, "Thank you, Prince, for your guidance." Although Yin Yang can't comprehend it, I know where the path is. I just have to directly walk over. Zhong Shou nodded his head slightly. He didn't expect his sword to be able to let Yin Yang instantly comprehend it. In the end, he needed to comprehend it before it could truly become something of his. However, since he had already helped him today, why not help him all the way to the west? Yin Yang had already comprehended the knife rhythm and had some understanding of strength. If he was able to see a sword intent of the same nature, he would be able to improve further. The lightning-toothed sword in his hand changed once more. It turned from a pale white to a blazing white. like even the sword body was starting to burn. Yin Yang's expression changed, and he hurriedly concentrated, looking carefully. Coincidentally, at this moment, Chu Shui's voice spread into his ears. "Young master, Uncle Yin, there are people in front. It looks like the City Lord Manor." Zhong Shou was slightly startled as he looked over, only to see Chu Shui swiftly running over. However, her body was covered in bird feathers. There were even a few strands of hair on her face. He couldn't help but burst out laughing. Speaking of which, Chu Shui was in such a state because of him. The so-called bird catching was to catch 72 different types of birds each day and place them within 200 feet, not allowing a single one to escape. With Chu Shui's speed, it seemed simple, but it was actually really complicated and difficult. Every day she would add 4 more, which was the best way to train her battle instincts. These birds all had their own abilities to help them escape and fly. It could also help Chu Shui grasp methods to deal with spells. Yin Yang really wanted to kill someone. Just as he was comprehending something, he was interrupted. He couldn't help but stare over viciously. Chu Shui also stopped breathing, instinctively feeling that the situation wasn't good. She only felt that Yin Yang's gaze was suddenly really fierce. Zhong Shou also had a smile that wasn't a smile, filled with bad intentions. "You want to slack off again? Even if someone from the City Lord Manor comes, just let the servants report. Why did you run over here? Have those sparrows all flown away?" The courtyard that Cloud Saint City arranged for them was not small. There were 4 to 5 servants, but they usually stayed in the front courtyard and didn't appear. It was like they didn't want to have anything to do with them. Seeing that Chu Shui's face didn't even turn red, only looking around in embarrassment. She raised her head to look at the sky, using her fingernails to scratch her face. Zhong Shou instantly smiled and walked to the front. The person who came was a Xiantian master, close to 60 years old, with a muscular body. He didn't enter the hall, just waiting at the door. When Zhong Shou arrived, he bowed respectfully, letting the servant beside him carry out a few wooden plates. "I heard that the prince ordered some things from the weapon shop of my Cloud Saint City. I was ordered by the city lord to bring them over on behalf of the prince." Samurai glanced at the wooden plates. They were the external bone parts that he had ordered, as well as a full 50 cloud pattern talisman knives that were crafted by spirit blacksmiths. His eyes couldn't help but squint. In the next moment, he heard this person say calmly, "We acted on our own accord, please don't blame the prince. Apart from that, the city lord also has something to tell the prince. Our Cloud Saint City has great scenery and is always peaceful. It is a great place to enjoy the scenery. If the prince likes it, why not stay for a few days?" After he finished, he bowed and brought the few people behind him and left. Chapter 109. Chu Shui didn't know what was going on, holding the few wooden plates as she looked at the backs of those few people. Weird. Why do they have to send these things to us? Did the Yuanbing house open by their Cloud Saint City Lord? Zhong Shou laughed but didn't reply. He grabbed a cloud pattern flying knife and played with it in his hand. The material of this knife was no weaker than the lightning tooth sword. Cloud pattern talismans were carved on it, and as long as it was slightly activated, a mist would appear. The ability of the cloud shocking god destroying sword intent was much stronger than the willow leaf flying knives he used before. It was still as thin as a cicada's wing, but it was much sharper. However, the current Zhong Shou wasn't focused on the knife in his hand. Instead, he was coldly looking at a building across the street. This was the City Lord Manor. A 50-foot-tall stone wall separated the spacious courtyard from the outside. On the right there was a tall building, taller than the stone wall. 10,000 feet away, looking out from here, one could see 2 people on it. What other reason can there be? They sent the things I ordered over so naturally, they want us to leave quickly. Chushua let out her face filled with confusion. Just now, that person obviously wanted them to stay for a few more days. However, that person's attitude towards them was like he was facing a god of plague, which made one really unhappy. Yin Yang's face was dark and sunken, his expression extremely ugly. Zhong Shou squinted his eyes and smiled. Cloud Saint City's scenery was great and it was always peaceful. It was the best place to enjoy the scenery. What he meant was that he didn't want to be dragged into this storm. Once something unexpected happened, it would go from being peaceful to being in trouble. No matter how good the scenery was, no one would come here to enjoy the scenery. He was open-minded and understood the difficulties of the Cloud Saint City Lord. If it was him, he would most probably do the same. However, he would feel slightly uncomfortable in his heart. Rushing him away without even meeting him was a little too much. With a self-deprecating laugh, Zhong Shou no longer looked at the pavilion and walked back inside. Actually, even without the city lord's reminder, he was already prepared to leave. It was just that he was 2 days early. It would be a good thing if he could get his hands on these cloud-pattern flying knives and external bone parts earlier. He thought to himself that these peaceful and comfortable days would not last long. He couldn't even find a quiet place to settle down. In order to survive in this world, others were ultimately unreliable. Only one's own strength, swordsmanship, and chanting were the foundation of one's existence. We can't be careless. Lianqing, this is the Gantian Mountain Prince? 10,000 feet away, on top of a 5-story building. An old man in a brocade robe was leaning against the railing and watching. This person's face was red as dates, but his expression was calm. His right arm was muscular, but his left arm was as dry as wood. His slightly withered eyes flashed with a curious look. From here, he could see the thin youth on the other side of the street beyond the stone wall. To be able to sense our presence, this person's intuition is quite sharp. He doesn't look like someone who has never practiced martial arts. This prince is indeed a little special. However, I sent people to observe him for several days and didn't notice any signs of him practicing martial arts. He also doesn't look like he has trained his soul. If he is skilled in the martial path and chanting, there should be some clues on his body. However, Master, you also saw that he doesn't have any martial artist aura at all. He also doesn't have any spiritual sense seeping out. These words came from behind the old man in the brocade robe. A middle-aged man whose face was filled with wrinkles, looking like a butler, was standing with his hands by his side. He was dressed in a black robe and one couldn't see anything special about him. However, when he raised his head, his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. The old man frowned. Although that is the case, I still feel a little uneasy. Sir Lei Dong instructed us to take care of him and try our best to form a good relationship with him. In the end, not only did I not follow his instructions, but I also chased him away. The face of the butler known as Lianqing changed, and he was a little helpless. Master wasn't willing to do this. Due to the pressure from many sides, we had no choice but to do so. Sir Lei Dong has always been a casual person. After he ordered his subordinates to say those words, he didn't appear for a long time, which is really suspicious. In my opinion, Master Lei Dong might have already forgotten about this matter. This person is in a whirlpool and is involved in the battle between the Donglin sects. It is said that he has some connection with the Eight-Tail sect of the Skyfox race. It isn't something that our Cloud Saint City can interfere in. A dual meridian trash isn't worth our city taking on too much responsibility for him and fighting with those few people. Letting him leave is the best way. The old man hesitated. After a short while he sighed. I can only let you down. However, before this person leaves, he will definitely die. However, before he leaves, I still have to meet him and send him off. I don't want to have anything to do with this person, but I also don't want to become enemies because of this. There must be a reason why Sir Lei Dong thinks so highly of this person. Prepare some gifts and bring them over. Lianqing was startled and raised his head, only to see that the old man's face had calmed down. His tone and expression were not to be doubted. He could only keep his words and not try to persuade him. Lianqing will follow your orders. This will be arranged, but the size of the gift. That old man was in deep thought and didn't reply. Lianqing bowed slightly and directly retreated downstairs. He knew what this old master wanted. It didn't need to be expensive, just normal gifts would do. Returning to the courtyard, Chu Shui had already calmed down. Although she was furious before, thinking about it now, this was their territory after all. There was no danger and she had stayed here for over 10 days, so what was there to be unsatisfied about? She couldn't always let others shield her from the wind and rain. Yin Yang was the same, but he was much calmer. It was obvious that he had predicted this beforehand. I heard that Cloud Saint City Lord Su Jingyuan was famous in his early years. His personality was fiery and he did things viciously. He reached the martial ancestor realm at 35 and pretty much unified 3,000 miles of land around Cloud Saint City. However, he was injured by others and it was hard to heal, so he restrained his personality. He did things like a woman, dragging things out. He was kind to others and didn't make enemies with others. It was like that for tens of years. It was said that there were many times when he was forced into a corner and didn't dare to fight back. He relied on his relationship with those hidden sects to barely protect this city. It seems like it is getting worse and worse. Zhong Shou was a little shocked. Who knew that this Cloud Saint City Lord would have such a glorious time? A radius of 4,000 miles was enough to span several provinces. As for Yin Yang's last few sentences, he didn't think much of it. How could the personality of a lion be so easily suppressed? Su Jingyuan did things like that because he was helpless. However, this matter had nothing to do with him. Moreover, it was already late, so if he wanted to leave, he could only leave tomorrow. Once again entering his room, he couldn't help but glance at the hole in the wall. The hole wasn't blocked and the situation in the room beside could still be seen. Zhong Shou anxiously turned his head. He doesn't seem to be here? Did he leave from the back door? After being filled with doubt for a moment, Zhong Shou didn't bother anymore and started to assemble those parts. The wind-traveling spirit bone from before only had legs. As for the set he was custom-made, it included the upper arm. It was also made from grade 3 cloud whale bones, but the material was different. One was made from the ribs, the other from the wings that carried the weight of the cloud whale and allowed it to fly in the air. In terms of toughness, it was at least 3 times stronger. There were also many lightning patterns carved on it. The arms and joints were made from metal, shining with a cold glow. It made this set of external bones even stronger. The hands were the same, similar to sword claws. The 5 fingers could be wrapped within. Each finger sword was sharp and tough, no weaker than the lightning tooth. The runes carved on the outside were made from a material known as blood spirit copper. It was embedded into the bones, making the runes harder to damage and harder to repair. Zhong Shou spent an hour to assemble one set. After wearing it, he could feel that this set of external bones was resonating with the lightning phoenix talisman on his body. He fiercely punched out and crushed the only remaining sandalwood chair in his room. Samuraim's eyes lit up as he started to calculate his strength. Around 9,500 kilograms. My strength is around 3,600 kilograms. This set of external bones provides a full 5,900 kilograms of strength, close to the 10,000 kilograms of strength of a 9-meridian mythic master. Zhong Shou was shocked. The set of new external bones he assembled was called lightning travel. It was different from wind travel, which used wind power to move, while lightning travel used electricity to move. Both of them had the characteristic of being swift. However, in this aspect, the lightning travel spirit bone was far above wind travel, even exceeding cloud stepping foals. Its combat ability wasn't weak either. Not only could the 5-finger sword claws work, but the left and right arms had a space to hide sword. If one had enough soul power, they could even use lightning to injure people. However, in his last life, this lightning travel spirit bone could at most provide 5,000 kilograms of strength. Most probably the cloud whale bones of this era weren't domesticated. Wild items are naturally tougher. Zhong Shou was excited, his body suddenly moving about in the room, using this bone to try out his fist technique. It wasn't the Foundation Spirit Fountain nor the 5-wheel Enlightened King Fist. Instead, it was extremely sharp, 10 sword claws bringing with them a cold light. As swift as a tiger, as fierce as a leopard. However, a moment later, Zhong Shou's interest waned. This external bone is strong, but when I wear it, the fist techniques I use won't be as nimble as a human body. If I wear it to battle, my combat strength will drop by 2 levels. No wonder in my last life, apart from those peak external bones that were made by artifact blacksmiths, all the other experts treated them like trash. Looking into his body, he realized that in this half a day, he had practiced a round of the sword and a set of fist technique. However, the essence of the lightning phoenix egg that he had absorbed was too little. Only a small amount was truly absorbed by his blood, flesh, and skin. If he wanted to break through, he would need at least a few months. Shaking his head slightly, Zhong Shou sat on his bed, taking out a cloud pattern flying knife, and placing it in his palm. His right hand slightly exerted strength, and the flying knife rose up like a spiritual artifact, hanging half an inch above Zhong Shou's palm. Chapter 110. In the morning of the second day, Chu Shui brought out the 18 cloud stepping foals she raised in the stables. Zhong Shou used these few days of free time to fix up the carriage. He added in tens of grade 3 wind element beast crystals, as well as a few spiritual formations. It made the speed faster and the environment within the carriage more comfortable. Zhong Shou's personality was just like that. If he had the ability, he wouldn't be stingy to make his life better. Unfortunately, he still couldn't find that Windrider foal. That day at the foot of Blood Valley Demon Corpse Mountain, he did meet 2. Unfortunately, one was broken by him and he didn't dare to ride the other. He wouldn't even touch something that could easily expose his identity. That person had a full 10 grade 7 mythic masters beside him, so the power behind him definitely wasn't weak. Who knew where he came from? Leisurely looking on from the side, Chu Shui clumsily brought those cloud stepping foals one by one to the front of the carriage and put on the reins. Only then did Zhong Shou slowly walk over. However, before he walked over, he heard a bell-like questioning voice from behind. "Where are you all going? Are you leaving Cloud Saint City?" Zhong Shoxin sighed in his heart. He didn't need to turn his head to know that it was Xianyuan Iren. Why did he have to come back at this time, of all times? Acting like he didn't hear it, Zhong Shou continued to walk towards the carriage. Then, he heard the sound of wind as the red shadow flashed beside him. Xianyuan Iren was already blocking the carriage door. Sizing up Zhong Shou, the doubt in her eyes grew thicker. "Why are you dressed like that? Why are you learning how to walk like that mechanical puppet? Don't you know that if other people see you, they will laugh at you for being an idiot? You still haven't answered me. Are you leaving Cloud Saint City?" Zhong Shou was wearing a wide robe. His body seemed to have doubled in size. However, his small face was still exquisite, looking really weird. His actions were also really stiff, no different from when the mechanical puppet walked. This was actually a special characteristic of the lightning travel spirit bone. Normally, when it walked, it was indeed somewhat mechanical. His body shook left and right. Seeing that Xianyuan Iren had no intention of moving aside, Zhong Shou could only helplessly stand still, saying seriously, Zhong Shou is about to leave and return to my Gantian mountain. Miss Xianyuan, you have a bright future ahead of you. Why must you follow someone like me, whose life is in danger? I've already prepared the insulation letter. Please go back as soon as possible, Mississippi. I'm sure Uncle and Auntie have been worried about you for a long time. Xianyuan Iren's expression did not change at all. She only stared fixedly at Zhong Shou's eyes. These words, Zhong Shou, you actually dare to say them? What do you want to do with my reputation and integrity? Have you ever heard that starvation is a small matter, but losing one's chastity is a big matter? Chu Shui didn't notice anything strange, but Li Yunyang's eyebrows twitched subconsciously. She had many questions in her heart. What did this have to do with reputation? Zhong Shou also suddenly felt a little guilty. He coughed lightly and decided to change his method. Even if Miss Xianyuan wants to marry me, it has to be a proper marriage. Although we are engaged, our parents' orders and matchmakers' words have not been completed. Before we are truly married, how can we travel together? He thought to himself that this girl's brain was flooded with water. Why was she so stubborn about loyalty, kindness, and morals? Then, if he used the same rules to deal with her, he would definitely succeed. As expected, Xianyuan Iren hesitated slightly, but a moment later she decisively shook her head. These are all small matters. You will face dangers along the way. As your fiancé, how can I sit still and do nothing? Actually, in my eyes, it is best if we don't go to Gantian Mountain. Zhong Shou, why don't we go out to sea together? If you give up the Monster King position, I can also not bother about the Pill Fountain sect. Zhong Shou's mouth was agape. How did she end up talking about eloping? Li Yunyang's expression changed, her brows furrowed, and she was really anxious. Xianyuan Iren acted like she didn't see anything, her tone determined. No matter where you go, I will follow you until you are truly safe. Zhong Shou laughed bitterly. I, Zhong Shou, am an indomitable spirit. Why would I need a girl to protect me? Yesterday in the back courtyard, you should have sensed something. In your eyes, how many people below the martial ancestor realm are my opponent? When Li Yunyang heard that, she burst out into laughter. She was just short of saying that he was shameless. Xianyuan Iren's face was filled with doubt. Sensed what? Are you talking about Uncle Ian? His knife rhythm has formed and is close to entering power. As expected from a famous family. However, if I want to protect you, Uncle Ian will still need some time. Zhong Shou couldn't help but facepalm. He thought back to how Xianyuan Iren was shocked and her breathing was chaotic. She probably couldn't sense what was happening outside. Shaking his head slightly, Zhong Shoxin had a thought. The black wave sword hidden in his sleeves was about to shoot out. At this moment, no matter what he said, it wasn't as convincing as a spiritual sword that could fly through the air. However, he suddenly thought about something, and the black wave sword stopped in his sleeve. Thinking about how stubborn this girl was, even if he used all his strength, would it be of any use? He might end up making a fool of himself. Before he could think of a reason, Xianyuan Iren opened her mouth once more. Even if there is a day when you have the ability to protect yourself, Zhong Shou, don't worry. How can this marriage contract be broken so easily? If you don't want me, then I can only follow your wishes. I will not marry for the rest of my life to preserve my chastity. Oh right, where is Uncle Ian? Zhong Shou had no choice, walking around Xianyuan Iren in annoyance. What Uncle Ian? He saw that I wasn't having a good time and ran away by himself yesterday. Xianyuan Iren was shocked, following which her brows furrowed. I don't believe you. Yin Yang is a loyal person, so why would he betray his master and run away? You are lying. Just as she was about to follow behind, she saw Zhong Shou, who had already boarded the carriage, looking down with an evil smile. Miss Xianyuan wants to travel with me? Zhong Shou doesn't mind, but is it convenient for you? Sizing up Xianyuan Iran, it was like he had just seen her yesterday. That alluring body was still right in front of his eyes. He remembered that before the mysterious moon would brilliance technique reached small success, she had to cultivate it once every 3 days. Moreover, she had to be naked. If she had clothes that could resist fire, then it was okay. If she didn't, then she could only let him feast his eyes like yesterday. Xianyuan Iran's face instantly flushed red. Scoffing, she turned around and left furiously. Sister Yunyang, go find people from Lingyun's sect and borrow a carriage for me. Li Yunyang's heart jumped, not coming back to her senses for a long time. She only felt that Xianyuan Iran's words were filled with an indescribable shyness. Zhong Shou heaved a sigh of relief, and wanted to let this girl get on the carriage as well. Then, he wouldn't have to do anything along the way. When he entered the city, he was surrounded by people, but when he left, it was a little desolate. When he passed the city gates, he saw Zhongling riding a windrider foal at the city gates, looking over coldly. Her eyes were filled with disdain, like she was saying, 13 days ago, did you think that today would happen? When you chased me, Zhongling, away from the city gates, did you think that the one who would be chased out of Cloud Saint City would be you, Zhong Shou? Did those words from a few days ago come true? In the next moment, he saw Zhongling gallop forward on the horse, like she was about to gallop over. Zhong Shou decisively rolled down the window and shouted for the horse to speed up. Chu Shui instantly waved her whip, urging the 18 cloud-stepping foals to gallop. Their speed was actually comparable to that of Zhongling's windrider foal. The latter probably didn't have any intentions of chasing, and in just a moment she was left far behind. Zhong Shou was too lazy to argue with this person, but in his heart, he still felt really depressed. He wished that a bunch of assassins would come and use the swords in his sleeves to viciously kill them and stun them. Hey! So I, Zhong Shou, am still unable to truly remain calm. Although my heart is as calm as water, it is like the moon in the well. When it meets the wind and sand, there are still ripples. In my chest, I still have the heart of victory, the thoughts of fame and fortune. Keeping his emotions, Zhong Shou slowly removed all the distracting thoughts, sitting on the soft couch and entering deep thought. At this moment, if one looked carefully, one would notice that the muscles in his body were trembling at an undetectable rate. This was the internal breathing leading technique. Since absorbing the lightning phoenix egg, Zhong Shou had been using this technique at every moment. It caused the Xiantian essence energy that had accumulated in various parts of his body to solidify. It would be easier for it to merge into his body in the future. As for Zhong Shou's consciousness, it was like a swan flying into the underworld. In the long river of his memories, it started to flow. In his last life, he had stored half a library, hundreds of thousands of books, in his mind. He had read many secret manuals, many of which were top-secret techniques from some large sects 10,000 years ago. However, a qi cultivation method suitable for his dual meridian body was already really hard to find. Spiral meridians like his were never seen before. It was even more impossible to find one that was truly suitable for his half-demon body. If I want to create my own qi cultivation method, then I can use this indefinite Spirit Emperor art as a reference. As for the Lightning Phoenix, it has the 9 Destruction Maniac Lightning technique in its memory. Although it isn't as good as the Mysterious Cloud Spirit Sect's secret technique, it is enough to design a basic qi cultivation method below Martial Ancestor. The problem is that I don't know the specialty of my human race bloodline, so this qi cultivation method has to be all-inclusive. Oh right. How could I forget that the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique mentioned that the essence of all phenomena in the world is the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. With this as the basis, it might work. There are people in front. Zhong Shou was originally deep in thought. The thought from before was like a ray of light in the darkness, surprising him. However, moments later, wariness appeared in his eyes. At this moment, he was already 15 miles out of Cloud Saint City, and there were occasionally some people on the road. However, he didn't pay attention to any of them. Even if it was a Xiantian master, Zhong Shou didn't care about him. The meaning of the words "there are people in front" meant that there were people who could threaten his life. Slightly analyzing, the aura of these two people seemed familiar, and they didn't have any killing intent. So it is them. Zhong Shou shook his head, walking to the front of the carriage and ordering Chu Shui to stop the carriage. Following which, he saw a few people quietly waiting by the side of the road. Samarim directly looked at the 60-year-old man. "Are you Cloud Saint City City Lord Su Jingyuan?" In Donglin Cloud Continent, Gantian Mountain was like a big country, which was why Zhong Shou directly called him by his name. Chapter 111. The people beside the brocade-robed old man immediately became angry. Their eyes were filled with annoyance as they stared right at Zhong Shou. Beside them stood a man around 40, coldly looking at Zhong Shou. "Although the prince's identity is noble, you don't know your manners. Don't you know how to respect the young and old?" Zhong Shou smiled, not bothering at all, continuing to get off the carriage and expressionlessly looking at the old man. Su Jingyuan himself was slightly awkward, opening his mouth to stop the person beside him. "Lianqing, shut up. The prince is the prince of Gantian Mountain. He isn't being rude." He then bowed towards Zhong Shou. "Prince, please forgive me. During this half a month, I had matters outside and had no time to leave. Only today was I able to rush back to meet the prince." "Prince, are you leaving the city to leave? Why don't you stay in my Cloud Saint City for a few more days?" Chu Shui, who was sitting in front, instantly curled her lips. She thought to herself that these people were really hypocritical. They were obviously chasing him away, but they still acted like they wanted him to stay. She couldn't help but wave her horse whip, which was really ear-piercing on this wide and spacious road. It caused those cloud-stepping foals to become restless and uneasy. Zhong Shou acted like he didn't hear it, not even blinking. "City Lord is too polite. Although Cloud Saint City is good, it isn't my hometown. No matter how beautiful the scenery is, it is hard to truly feel at ease, which is why I want to return." Su Jingyuan nodded slightly when he heard that. "Prince Zhong Shou's words make sense, so I won't try to persuade you anymore. I've brought some humble gifts, and I hope that the Crown Prince will accept them. In the future, if you see Sir Lei Dong, please help me apologize. I have my own difficulties and am really helpless. During this half a month, if there was anything I didn't take good care of you, please forgive me." Zhong Shou smiled. No wonder this person wanted to run out of the city to meet him. He was afraid that he would argue in front of Lei Dong and cause trouble. His eyes moved, only to see that the few servants were still holding a few wooden plates. There were a few hundred grade 3 beast crystals and 3 talisman soldiers placed neatly. Other than that, there were also 2 jars that sealed guardian spirit beasts. The jar was sealed shut, but from the aura it gave off, it should be a soul beast that was around the 2nd rank. It was obviously not a small gift. However, if one were to say that it was thick and heavy, it was still far from it. Secretly shaking his head, Zhong Shou felt that there was nothing to be unhappy about. However, the fact that the other party had brought these items over and even personally gifted them to him showed that he had the intention to form a good relationship with him. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame himself. His reputation as a trash was simply too widespread. A moment later, Zhong Shou's gaze was fixed on the old man's left arm. Raising his eyebrows slightly, he said, "City Lord's left arm is in such a state. Could it be that it was injured by someone's sword intent? Why don't you ask someone to expel it?" According to Yin Yang, the City Lord of Cloud Saint City had been injured many years ago and had yet to fully recover. It was most likely this injury. His flesh and blood were almost completely dried up. It was obvious that someone had forcefully cut off his chi, blood, and essence energy. It was equivalent to being crippled. Lianqing's expression changed once more, his eyes sunk. The other few servants all had furious looks on their faces. This teen really touched a sore spot, no wonder he ended up in such a state. Su Jingyuan was really open-minded. Although he was a little unhappy, he still kept his temper and explained, "Prince's eyesight is really good. My left arm is indeed here because of the sword intent left behind. It was also because I was too arrogant in the past that I attracted this disaster. During these few years, I asked someone to expel it. However, the person who injured me was not only an ascended ancestor, but the sword intent he contained was also a little weird. Even Sir Lei Dong had no way to expel it and could only remain like this." Zhong Shou frowned. The sword intent that was left in Su Jingyuan's body was indeed a little weird. However, in the future, he had seen similar martial path intents several times. Actually, it wasn't much of a problem. The spiritual energy of the future declined, but the martial path that was developed to its peak during the God Emperor era was mostly preserved. Many of the secret techniques of the hidden sects were spread to the commoners, and he had benefited greatly from it. Thinking about it carefully for a moment, Zhong Shou smiled. "During this half a month, City Lord has more or less protected me from the wind and rain. I, Zhong Shou, don't like to owe people favors. Today, I will help you get rid of this sword intent and we are even." Su Jingyuan was startled, following which he found it amusing. His injuries were something that even an ascended ancestor couldn't do anything about. A kid who had just reached 13 and couldn't even cultivate actually dared to say such big words. He was so arrogant to say that he would help him get rid of the sword intent in his body. The few servants beside him were the same. Before this, when they looked at Zhong Shou, their gazes were filled with rage. However, at this moment it was like they were looking at an idiot. This person probably wasn't really impolite, but his personality was a little funny. Lianqing sighed. "Prince, even Sir Lei Dong said that unless a spiritual grandmaster with 9 meridians of the heaven chakra level helped, there was no hope of curing it. Prince, do you think that you can beat Sir Lei Dong?" "My master appreciates your good intentions." What he meant was that he didn't need to worry about it. When Zhong Shou heard that, he scoffed. How was it so complicated to get rid of this sword intent? If he didn't understand, then naturally it would be tough. However, if he knew the theory behind it, it wouldn't be difficult to remove it. Even now, he could barely do it. He was too lazy to explain to this person, walking towards Su Jingyuan. Lianqing was slightly shocked, suddenly stepping forward and blocking in front of Zhong Shou. However, Zhong Shou suddenly pointed out with his right hand. In that instant, numerous illusions appeared in front of his eyes. In his mind, he felt as if an unfathomable and tyrannical sword was stabbing towards him from the sky. It actually gave him a feeling that he had nowhere to hide and couldn't avoid it. Lianqing's pupils constricted, and he immediately moved to the right. He instinctively reached for the blade at his waist, but before he could pull it out, a purple lightning flashed. He saw a purple lightning flash and a finger strike out from the illusions, smashing into the side of his right shoulder. His entire body instantly went soft and numb, unable to summon up any energy, nearly collapsing to the ground. His heart was filled with shock and fear, and his mind was completely blank. To be able to become the butler of the Cloud Saint City Lord, his strength was above Xiantian, a Xiantian master who had opened 2 meridians of the Earth chakra level. At this moment, he couldn't even block one finger from this teen. From when he went up to block to when he was restrained, less than a flick of a finger had passed. Was this Gantian mountain prince really a piece of trash, who hadn't even opened his chakra meridians? Could it be that someone else was impersonating him in order to harm Master? Numerous thoughts instantly filled his mind. However, even if he tried his best to struggle, the strength in his body was slowly disappearing. That Su Jingyuan was also shocked. His eyes filled with wariness as he looked at the half-monster teen who had safely passed by Lianqing's side. Without any hesitation, Su Jingyuan stepped forward, the thick energy around him surging. Like a lion that had just woken up, his shoulders lowered as he coldly looked down at Zhong Shou. The aura was thick and heavy, fierce and cold, giving off a cold, killing intent. It was like it was about to explode, and in an instant it could tear Zhong Shou into pieces. In the next moment, Su Jingyuan suddenly felt a strong intent explode out from Zhong Shou's body. Compared to before, it was several times stronger. The half-monster teen in front of him had dozens of illusions, and he was unable to see where his real body was. Clumps of clouds gathered at the side, faintly discernible. The surrounding mythic master servants all turned ashen white under the suppression of this intent, unable to get close. Cloud shocking god-destroying sword intent. Su Jingyuan's pupils constricted, and he wanted to go all out to take down this weird half-monster teen. Only to hear a light king as Zhong Shou held a sword in his hand. A bright thunder-toothed sword, shining with lightning, pointed at him from afar. That cloud-like mist-like sword intent changed once more. This time, it was extremely sharp, like it could pierce through everything in the world, stabbing into one's heart. It made him feel like there was no part of his body that wasn't a fatal weakness. The sword intent that had been hidden in his body for a long time seemed to be resonating with one another, suddenly charging out from all parts of his body. It caused the energy meridians in his body to be blocked, and his aura was in a mess. In that instant, he couldn't move at all. The energy that was gathered around his body was slowly being destroyed. At this moment, Su Jingyuan could only move his eyes. Looking at Zhong Shou calmly walking over, his eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Waves were raging in his chest, and he couldn't control himself. If he didn't know that the person in front of him was only 13, and his looks weren't right, and he didn't look like he was faking it, he would have thought that the martial path intent left in his body belonged to him. From tens of feet away, he was able to control the sword intent in his body. Why did this teen come? Did he really want to harm him and assassinate him? Was he the real Gantian mountain prince Zhong Shou? Was he the dual meridian trash in the rumors? If he wasn't Zhong Shou, why would he do that? If this person wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. Why did he have to set up such a situation to draw him out? If he was really Zhong Shou, why did he have to hide so deeply? How was this person trash? In just a few breaths, he suppressed Lianqing such that he couldn't move and could only be slaughtered. How could there be such trash in this world? He obviously had a secret technique that he didn't reveal. Zhong Shou looked at Su Jingyuan's expression and roughly guessed what he was thinking. He wasn't willing to argue with this person, expressionlessly shaking his head. Zhong Shou was rude today, please forgive me. Placing his hand on Su Jingyuan's wrist, Zhong Shou sent a thread of energy in. A moment later, he broke out into a laugh. As expected, it is the meridian yin-yang technique and the withering sword energy. Zhong Shou isn't talented, but I can help solve some of your problems. Not caring whether Su Jingyuan agreed or not, he stabbed a few golden needles in. Just as Su Jingyuan felt the meridians in his body going berserk, unable to vent, he thought that he was about to die. Zhong Shou used the lightning-toothed sword to slice his left arm. A streak of fresh blood spurted out, spraying 100 feet away. It was mixed with threads of sharp energy, instantly causing numerous holes to appear in the grass. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.